Dragon Tamer. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126, A Fresh Start. As Jizai pushed the tower of the house, a man was startled awake. He raised his right hand, checking his watch in the dim light. It was 4:55. Upon seeing the time, he tiptoed to his feet. Unlike the survivors, who usually slept until 8 or 9, he rose at 5 every day, though today he was a few minutes early. His name was Wang Suching, one of the survivors at the train station. But he wasn't one of the survivors who had followed Gong weeks in from the underground garage shelter, nor was he a relative of the first group of survivors who had followed Liu Ming. He was an ordinary survivor who had survived the lava dogs and various monsters, and was discovered and rescued by search teams. According to historical records, the train station would have been a major disaster area, nearly completely destroyed in the early days of the apocalypse, becoming a haven for monsters. It wasn't until Liu Zuan and his men killed the lava dogs and destroyed the 4-color altar that the human casualties in the area around the train station during this period were described as 9 out of 10 houses empty. Therefore, Wang Suching, who had managed to survive under such circumstances, and to do so with his family of 4, must have had some extraordinary qualities. These qualities were twofold. First, after the apocalypse, he was astonished to discover that his vision, previously nearsighted at nearly 800 degrees, had suddenly improved. Furthermore, his vision had significantly improved, allowing him to discern insect wings hundreds of meters away, allowing him to consistently detect danger and prepare for it before any other survivors. Second, he always made the best decisions in dangerous situations. Granted, they might not have been the best, but they were the ones that saved him. On the first day of the apocalypse, the residents of his building fled to the top floor under the threat of a terrifying man-eating monster. However, they all perished, leaving only him, his parents, and his elderly grandmother alive. He was the one who had sensed something was amiss the moment the apocalypse struck, and he drove at top speed, ignoring traffic lights and speed cameras, through the emergency lane. He and his family escaped home before traffic completely ground to a halt, saving his life. It was he who, despite all the opposition, led his parents and grandmother up from the 3rd floor of their home, carrying bags of food, to the rooftop. Of the people who had huddled on the rooftop to survive, his family of 4 was the first to reach it. He was also the first to see the true nature of humanity in the apocalypse, firmly instructing his parents and grandmother to hide the food and never share it with anyone. This prevented several bloody incidents over food, as his family of 4, with 3 elderly and a disabled member, would have been completely plundered and starved to death. Finally, when the nearly 100 people crammed onto the rooftop, exhausted by hunger and thirst, could no longer hold out, and tried to descend to search for food, he remained there, locking the iron gate tightly. Despite the pounding of those who had sought food and instead attracted the man-eating monsters, he refused to let his family open the gate until the search party, led by Chu Gang, arrived. Descending, he saw that all the residents who had hid with him on the rooftop had been reduced to corpses. The bodies were particularly numerous in front of the iron gate, a mountain of corpses. All sorts of flies, insects, and maggots, which feed on carrion, crawled over the stinking remains. Thinking of that scene now still made him feel nauseous, but it was only physical. His heart remained calm. He didn't feel that he had caused the deaths of those people. Even if he had opened the iron gate, he probably wouldn't have saved them, and would have only added to the number of lives lost in his own family. He could only feign death, to deceive the man-eating monsters, tricking them into thinking the rooftop was deserted, offering a glimmer of hope. Even now, the search team leader, Chu Gang, looked at him with a cold gaze, as if he were looking at a blood-stained executioner. He felt that he had killed those people at the rooftop iron gate in his quest for survival. But he knew he had no regrets. In the apocalypse, being powerless to protect oneself was a blessing. At 36, he had experienced much and had a clear understanding of the world. In peacetime, he had achieved great success in both life and career, and had once naively believed in morality and the principle of goodness is like water. But as if true to the old saying, everything that rises must fall. Just as his career was thriving and on the verge of peaking, a sudden and serious illness shattered his body and career. Betrayed one after another by his so-called brothers and his fiancée, who already wore a pigeon egg diamond ring, the business he had built was devoured by hyenas and wolves like a piece of unclaimed fat meat during his bedridden days. Even though his illness wasn't fatal, they were so eager to take care of him, completely oblivious to their disgusting and unsightly behavior. Fortunately, he returned home to recuperate with his parents, and under their loving care, he climbed out of bed. Although his body never fully recovered, it was far better than lying in bed like a useless invalid. His career, friendships, and love were all gone, but his character matured profoundly during that time. If he had it to do again, he believed he could still rebuild his glory. But as history has always said, there's no greater sorrow than a broken heart. He was weary, and his past glory was enough. Finally, he found a job that made ends meet. His dream was to spend his life in leisure, accompanying his parents, who had toiled for him for most of their lives. However, fate seemed to have no intention of granting him this wish. Disaster struck, and a life of leisure became a complete luxury. Oh, God doesn't even want me to stop, Wang Sucheng sighed, heading towards the square. Unlike the other survivors who resisted moving bricks and building the wall, Wang Sucheng, despite his poor health, was willing to do it and found it satisfying. Building the wall not only provided security for his temporary home but also made him feel like he wasn't just a freeloader. If he relied solely on the handouts of others for his survival without any contribution, his life would be miserable. After all, the status of the giver and the receiver was unequal, and the handouts they received were completely insecure and could be lost at any moment. If they were lost, his family of four would starve once again. However, this job of moving bricks and building the wall brought him a greater sense of security. He accepted food only when needed, a principle that was his due. So he rose early every day to go to work, knowing the area around the square was safe. Under the purges of the inhumanly powerful search team and their leader, the hundreds of meters around the train station became a near monster-free zone. All the monsters that strayed were either eaten by the cat-like behemoths, or devoured by the blood-red python's vines. However, many more were collected by a magical instrument, transformed into beams of light that shone brightly in the ticket hall at night. Indeed, he had discovered the sacrifice, a fact that hadn't been fully disclosed, currently known only to the combatants and the veterans of the team. He vaguely felt that the monster corpses and the light gleaming from the ticket hall at night were the true reason these search team members, once ordinary men like himself, were so powerful. He stayed behind, perhaps driven by a desire to attain that mysterious power. Even if he couldn't become as powerful as them, he would be content if he could completely cure his own hidden ailment. Although Chu Gang, the search team leader who had saved him, seemed somewhat hostile to him and held a clearly high position among the survivors, he remained undaunted. Remarkably, only Liu Ming, the leader of the search team, had the final say on all matters within the team. While Chu Gang harbored hostility towards him, he likely had to go through that man to deal with him. This was evident from the fact that the group had rioted that morning, and the remaining search team members hadn't dared to suppress it by force, waiting for Liu Ming's return to make a decision. Furthermore, based on his recent observations and analysis, he had discovered that Liu Ming possessed a certain charismatic streak. Whether or not he'd hear of this, even if he did, he'd likely agree with his decision. It was precisely this confidence that, when faced with the decision yesterday about whether to move to a safer location, he chose to stay with his family of four without hesitation, practically placing their lives in the hands of that man. He felt that he shared a similar type of person, someone who understood the challenges of life, someone who remained detached from emotions, and whose heart was thoroughly armored. In the morning light, donning white-lined gloves, he began to lay bricks. P.S. Here's the first update. This chapter takes up a little space to describe Wang Sucheng, because he is an important supporting character in the book. His role is roughly equivalent to the wise and strategic person in Liu Ming's forces. This character is a supporting role played by Brother Wildrew, who is also 36 years old. Chapter 127 Extraordinary Dialogue, Arrow Tower Guard. Despite the apocalypse, the sun still rose in the east. As daylight neared, 8 or 9 towers had already risen outside the ash-clad wall. Zeddy, still using his earth-based gravity field to drag countless rubbles along, followed Liu Ming. Liu Ming's face was pale, as if he had just finished a fierce battle, slightly exhausted. Sumi, meowing with concern, followed him, trying to reach out her long tail to support Liu Ming, but Liu Ming stopped her. This exhaustion wasn't physical, but rather a mental one. The construction of each stone fortress tower represented the severing and separation of a strand of his spiritual power, merging it with the tower. This detachment of spiritual power couldn't be replenished with a single night's rest. It was a fundamental spiritual force, equivalent to soul force, vastly different from what most people consider spirit. Liu Ming estimated that building 2 or 3 more stone fortress towers would reach his limit, and if he didn't stop, he risked damaging his soul's essence. Although no scientific research in peacetime confirmed the existence of the soul, countless methods have emerged in later generations to prove its existence. Necromancers, soul puppeteers, and puppeteers, among other professions, are experts in manipulating the soul. I originally wanted to build 100 or 80, but it seems that was just a fantasy, Liu Ming said with a look of self-mockery. His plan was to erect arrow towers every 10 meters along the entire perimeter of the ash wall, but given the current situation, his limit was 11 or 12. That's it, Zeddy. Pile the rocks together, Liu Ming instructed, pointing to the spot beneath his feet. Zeddy roared a few words, indicating that he understood, and asking Liu Ming to move aside. Then, using his earth-based talent, he manipulated countless rubble to form a mound of rubble at that location. 10 minutes later, an 8-meter tall grey-white stone arrow tower appeared in its place. Instructing Zeddy to continue transporting stone, Liu Ming headed towards the gap in the wall that hadn't yet been fortified. He planned to build the last 2 arrow towers there. The arrow towers would also serve as a protective shield for ordinary people while the wall was being built. Although he hadn't encountered a single monster all morning, giving the illusion that monsters had vanished and peace had returned to the world, this was merely an illusion. The cause was that after nightfall, he had Sumi command his giant cats to hunt the monsters roaming near the train station. Liu Ming uttered a puzzled sigh as he reached the gap in the wall. He saw a middle-aged man busily laying bricks. His strength was evidently limited, as he laid each brick one at a time, sweating profusely. However, the bricks he laid were perfectly level, each one fitting together almost perfectly, unlike the haphazard placement of others. Curiosity flickered in Liu Ming's eyes, and he walked over and asked, "Why are you building a wall here so early in the morning?" "Yes, boss, what's the problem?" The man looked up at the voice, smiling calmly at Liu Ming. There was no surprise or nervousness in his voice, nor did he address him as Mr. Liu like ordinary people did. Instead, he addressed him directly as boss, without a trace of discomfort or dissonance, as if that was the proper address. Liu Ming's curiosity grew. Most people would be either respectful or intimidated by him, even terrified. But no one had ever been so open and honest with him, as if chatting with a friend. Even Marjan had a certain respect for him. This man was either a clueless lunatic or a truly experienced person, Liu Ming thought to himself. No problem, I'm just curious why you did it. Boss, you provided us with protection and food. Isn't that what I'm supposed to do? Liu Ming smiled. It's indeed what you should do, but few people have the self-awareness you do. They all think I forced them to do it. Most people lived in peacetime not long ago, so their mindsets don't change so quickly, Wang Sucheng said with a similar smile. Then how did you change? Experiences can naturally change quickly. Liu Ming wanted to ask more, but Zeddy was already swaggering over, dragging countless pieces of rubble. With business at hand, Liu Ming could only pause his conversation with the man before him. Interesting man. He chuckled softly, then led Zeddy to a nearby location. Deep down, he felt a growing sense of difference between the middle-aged man before him and his average person. "What's your name?" he asked one last time before leaving. Wang Sucheng, a survivor who lives near the train station and was rescued by Captain Chu Gang. Liu Ming paused at the words. The name struck him as familiar, but it wasn't a name he remembered from later life, rather a name he'd recently heard mentioned. A fleeting thought flashed back to Chu Gang, who had once mentioned a ruthless individual. Could it be him? He turned his head, narrowing his eyes and smiling, and said, "You're not ordinary. I'm just an ordinary person, not like you, the extraordinary ones." Extraordinary? A hint of curiosity flashed in Liu Ming's eyes. "Yes, that's what we ordinary people call you in private." A grin crossed Liu Ming's lips. "You're wrong. I'm just an ordinary person, a stronger one." He then stepped aside and began flipping through the turret manual, invoking the power of creation. Amidst Wang Sucheng's barely suppressed astonishment, a stone fortress and arrow tower rose from the ground before his eyes. This scene, like a miracle, remained etched in his memory. Even years later, when asked what conviction had sustained him as he accompanied the Wuling Dragon Lord through so many desperate crises, he would recall, "At that moment, he was like a creator, performing miracles before my eyes." An unprecedented wild thought sprouted within me, to watch him ascend step by step to true deity. Whether it was the final madness of a man who had experienced many ups and downs, or a steadfast faith, Wang Sucheng ultimately lived up to his words, remaining steadfast and accompanying Liu Ming step by step to the final stage of godhood. Decades later, together with 15 others, they stood atop the holy city, hailed by all humanity as the 16 divine assistants. When Liu Ming built his 12th stone fortress, his mental strength was completely depleted. He was certain that, if he dared to exert even a single ounce of his mental energy, he would suffer permanent damage to his soul. Gazing at the dozen or so stone fortresses towering like giants against the fortified wall, Liu Ming seemed oblivious to the weakness wrought by his depleted mental strength, instead revealing a look of profound satisfaction. At this moment, everyone gradually awoke from their slumbers. Urged on by the search team, they all gathered their tools and headed for their daily workstation, the incompletely constructed wall. Arriving in the square, everyone was met with shock and disbelief, gaping in amazement at the 12 off-white towers that towered twice as high as the 4-meter wall. "Am I seeing things? How did so many stone towers suddenly appear? It must be an illusion," the crowd murmured. Suddenly, a clatter of footsteps echoed from outside the square, and a group of nimble figures rushed towards the square. The giant cats, who had been hunting near the train station at night, had returned. A mutated flying monster had been circling above them, stalking them, causing them to panic, but unable to do anything about it. The mutated flying monster had originally considered the giant cats, unable to attack from a distance, as prey, but now, seeing the survivors in the square who were clearly more vulnerable, it swooped down with a cry like an owl. Everyone was familiar with the giant cats, knowing they guarded the train station and were harmless. But the sight of the ferocious flying mutant approaching sent panic and confusion surging. Just as the helicopter-sized creature was about to soar over the fortified walls and onto the square, a swift, dark beam shot out from a hole in the side of a stone tower, striking the eye in the daylight. The beam instantly pierced the mutant as it was about to pass over the tower's summit, scattering it in a shower of blood. Only then did everyone realize that these stone towers weren't just mirages, but real deadly weapons. PS. Second update is here. I'm grateful for the support I've been thinking of for the past 4 days. I finally found the name I can only think of, and to grow old together with deep affection. Gentleman of the Gentleman's Tribe, 99.8, Nanzisheng, Zinmengayan, Chen Dao Dao, Suife, Book Friend. 201703072156033101, Fujian Kingfeng, Tan Mo, Brother Wildru, Fallen Angel Wuxin, Book Friend 161,209,134,319,518. Long Yi Zhen, Yu Yang, Xiao Disheng, Self-Destruction into Demon. My name is Zhu Yang Chang, Sea Crossing, He Yiming, Gentleman Bailu, and Yuppie. I'm also grateful to everyone who voted for me these days. Thanks to your support, even though I've been writing for over 2 months and still haven't seen the book published or received a penny in royalties, and its performance has been mediocre, seeing 4,000 of you vote one by one to help Dragon Breeder catch up to those books with tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of followers, it warms my heart. Chapter 128, Zombie Brother, Mutation and Devouring. The flying mutant's vitality was evidently no less tenacious than that of a cannibal corpse. Its head, still detached from half its body, still gleamed fiercely, and it flapped its rotting wings, only the last of its rotten flesh, as it charged towards the square. With a whoosh, a dark ray shot from the firing port on the square's side. The square-shaped stone arrow tower, facing away from the fortified wall and the square, instantly pierced the mutant's head, effectively killing the ferocious monster, which could only have reached levelly the crowd in the square, witnessing this scene, erupted in excitement, forming a massive mass towards the grey-white tower. While the origins of these fortress-like towers remained unknown, their excitement was palpable. These towers were clearly their guardian angels. Compared to the harmless yet menacing giant cats, these cold stone towers, resembling modern weapons, gave them a far greater sense of security. As everyone approached the stone fort's arrow towers, marveling at the mysterious towers that stood like giants guarding the fortified wall, a cold voice rang out, "Get to work. There's nothing to get excited about." Liu Ming suddenly appeared in front of a stone tower. "Stop looking. Get back to work. What are you looking at? What's so exciting about it?" Upon hearing Liu Ming's words, the search team members immediately echoed the excited crowd, urging them on. Despite the urging, no one showed any resentment. Each one beamed with joy as they headed to their respective sections of the wall to begin work. These 12 arrow towers gave them immense hope in facing the apocalypse. But Liu Ming walked into one of the towers, sat cross-legged on the ground, and began cultivating his yuan qi. He no longer felt like overseeing the work today. His mental strength was already severely weakened. If he were to fight again, his overall strength would likely drop by 10% or 20%. Cultivating yuan qi was the fastest way to restore his mental strength. After practicing for a while, a sudden throbbing sensation crept into Liu Ming's heart. Then, Liu Ming's temples throbbed, as if struck by a heavy blow, and a tearing pain washed over him. 3 incredibly faint consciousnesses reached him, their voices utterly anxious and feeble, like candles in the wind, poised to go out completely at any moment. They seemed to be calling out to him, more like pleading for help. "What is this?" Liu Ming exclaimed in surprise, swallowing back the pain. These 3 consciousnesses were none other than the ordinary cannibal corpses he had enslaved after unexpectedly gaining a modicum of control after using the Lord's mutant brain crystal. Because he controlled and enslaved them with his soul power, rather than completely dividing and merging his mental power, like he had in the creation manual, to create the stone fort and arrow tower, he maintained a constant connection through his soul imprint, controlling them like a clone of himself. If they died, his soul would be damaged accordingly. He's really digging his own grave. Liu Ming raged. His mental power was already depleted, and now these 3 minions had caused him more trouble. It was like adding fuel to the fire, a double whammy. However, he could only immediately sense the minions' location and rush over. In their haste to leave, they hadn't even taken Giseli Rang and Sumi with them. If one were to look down from the air, one could see a ferocious beast-like figure sprinting down the highway, a cloud of dust billowing as it raced along, barely outpacing the speed of a car on the congested road. After running for over half an hour, Liu Ming finally stopped. His younger brother's consciousness had come from this area. He glanced around and realized he had reached the junction of the west and east sides of the city, near a large market. From the market, a strong smell of blood wafted through. Liu Ming drew his Jufeng, his entire body coated in molten lava, like a warrior in molten armor. The flaming domain of his flame dragon wing cloak also unfolded, and he advanced towards the entrance. As he reached the entrance, an incomparable cacophony of roaring and gnawing filled the air. It was like walking into a football stadium and hearing the cheers of countless fans, except this time the cheers were the terrifying cries of countless monsters. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of monsters were engaged in a fierce battle surrounding the raw meat section and the market's center. These cannibal zombies, normally indifferent to hostility, now engaged in a frenzied and brutal fight like bloodthirsty enemies. His subordinates were at the center of the fray, lying dismembered in a pool of blood, their arms and legs missing, as if they had been brutally slaughtered. Over a dozen other cannibal zombies were crouching over his 3 cannibal zombies, gnawing at their flesh, as if devouring some unearthly delicacy. Don't cannibal zombies normally devour each other? Liu Ming thought, his brow furrowed. He felt a surge of annoyance. They were his subordinates, after all. Though they were just 3 mindless monsters, seeing them lying helpless on the ground, their pitiful state made him, as their leader, unable to ignore them. He unleashed several blasts of evil dragon spells, sending all the monsters blocking Liu Ming's path flying and sending them flying, instantly clearing a path for him. He wielded his absolute blade and sprinted through the rapidly closing bloody passage. In less than 10 breaths, he reached his minions. The monsters still devouring the flesh and blood of the 3 minions erupted at the sight of Liu Ming approaching, their eyes filled with madness as they pounced on the human who had interrupted their feast. Liu Ming swung, hacked, and chopped back and forth, and in a matter of seconds, over a dozen cannibal corpses, no stronger than F rank, were chopped to pieces like cucumbers. The molten lava and the power of the flame scorched them all, their bodies utterly dead. Liu Ming then looked at his minions. With only one head still intact, everything below the neck, save for half of the ribcage, had been devoured. He wondered what these 3 minions, not even F rank, had done to deserve such a brutal slaughter. Speechless and unsure how to help his minions, Liu Ming suddenly caught sight of a massive corpse lying dozens of meters away. Surrounding the corpse, numerous E and even D-class mutants were still fighting frantically, their quest to devour more flesh. It was the corpse of a malformed mutant. Judging by the aura and the residual energy fluctuations surrounding it, it was at least a C-class mutant. Its body was covered in massive tumors, within which seemed to swirl streams of murky fluid. Tumor bomb mutant. Liu Ming muttered with a look of nostalgia. He recalled a time when his team, while on a demon hunters club mission, had been nearly annihilated by an encounter with a 2nd level tumor bomb mutant. This mutant, with its deformed organs, was a monster bomb. Its tumors were filled with potent fluids capable of producing massive explosions. Every time a tumor bomb mutant threw one of its tumors, it unleashed a detonation comparable to that of a grenade or rocket. Parts of the tumor bomb mutant's body were faintly visible among the shattered limbs and flesh surrounding his subordinates. It seems they were besieged and slaughtered because they devoured the flesh and blood of C-class tumor bomb mutants. What a combination of bad luck and good fortune. P.S. Here's a first update, a bit late. Because Fengsha's salary increase went wrong today, and it was so low it was almost insulting. I've been feeling down and can't write. Brothers, please forgive me. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129, Horrifying Regeneration, Abnormal Evolution. Just as Liu Ming averted his gaze from the cannibals fighting frantically over the C-class mutant's corpse not far away, he was surprised to notice that the bodies of his 3 subordinates were slowly growing. While cannibals possessed incredibly tenacious vitality, it was absurd to say they could regenerate severed limbs. This was true for a very few with exceptional regenerative abilities. Ordinary cannibals, after sustaining serious injuries like severed limbs, could only stop the bleeding and remain alive for a short period, even continuing to attack ferociously. However, their lives would not be as long as those of ordinary cannibals. Their severed limbs would not regrow. Meanwhile, his 3 ordinary cannibal subordinates, once mere scumbags, were now repairing their bodies at a visible rate. As they recovered from their injuries, they desperately crawled towards the C-class monster's organs. They resembled a ridiculous funnel. Every drop of flesh and blood they swallowed would slide down their throats, only to leak out of their bloody chests like a funnel. Then, they swallowed the flesh, already partially broken down by the highly corrosive acidic mucus in their mouths. Each time they devoured, they seemed to absorb some mysterious substance from the flesh of these C-class mutants, accelerating the growth of their own limbs. The scene was horrifying. This repeated several times, making Liu Ming's eyes twitch with impatience. Liu Ming grabbed the remains of the cannibal corpse he had dismembered with his sword, and using his mental perception to control the fragments, he stuffed them directly into the mouths of his 3 minions. At least he was stuffing them much faster than the 3 minions had eaten before, and his recovery speed had also increased. Blood membranes and tendons had begun to grow on their torsos below the chest. although only a small portion of the body remained, looking extremely horrible. At least there was hope of recovery. After waiting for a long time, Liu Ming frowned and whispered, "The flesh and blood of these ordinary mutants is not very effective." With that, he brandished his long sword and rushed towards the massive corpse, which was nearly the size of a bus just lying there. Each tumor bomb mutant was larger than a typical deformed mutant. The larger they were, the more tumors they possessed, and their power increased accordingly. Seeing Liu Ming, this outlaw, charging for a piece of the action, a top-tier E-class mutant lost its composure and pounced fiercely. This mutant, also a deformed one, had its mouth as its combat organ. A large, ugly face, seemingly stitched together, suddenly split open, splitting into 8 petals, each endowed with sharp fangs. The mutated maw, like 8 long thorns, attacked Liu Ming. Liu Ming leaped toward the mutant without evasion, twisting his body across the air conditioner, and activated his sword technique, Wind Wheel. The sharp edge combined with the force of rotation instantly severed the 8 petals of the maw, and he then unleashed a blast of evil dragon curse power. Liu Ming then quickly unleashed the flame field of his flame dragon wing cloak. The mutant exploded like a bloody firework, its bloody, rotting flesh crackling against the invisible force field created by the flame realm. It took several breaths for it to stop. Seeing the mutant's tragic death, another, even more powerful malformed mutant lunged at Liu Ming. A flash of blood flashed in Liu Ming's eyes, and his spatial slicing blades instantly activated, forming a web of slicing space blades. The malformed mutant, barely reaching D-level energy, was instantly shattered into pieces as it pounced. Liu Ming swung his sword at the C-level tumor bomb mutant, dodging its still explosive tumors. He quickly severed a massive piece of flesh weighing over 100 kilograms, and dragged it to his subordinate. This time, no mutant dared to stop him. Of course, under normal circumstances, all the mutants would have fearlessly attacked Liu Ming, a human anomaly, but now, scrambling to devour the flesh of the advanced mutant was more pressing. Since Liu Ming's instant kill of the D-class mutant proved his formidable character, the mutants worthy of the flesh and blood tacitly chose to ignore his presence and actions for the time being. Seeing a large piece of high-level mutant flesh, like the flesh of Tang Sanzang and the eyes of a demon, the 3 scumbags were all excitedly dragging their lower bodies down to devour it frantically. After swallowing hundreds of kilograms of flesh and blood, which leaked out again, swallowed again, and leaked out again, the lower parts of their bodies above the legs finally grew back. Furthermore, organs similar to stomachs also regenerated, so at least the flesh and blood they swallowed would no longer leak out. As the last piece of flesh was devoured, the 3 scumbags looked at Liu Ming with pitiful eyes. Liu Ming nodded in understanding and attacked again, reclaiming a piece of flesh and blood several times heavier, at least over 300 kilograms. Despite the tumor bomb mutant's impressive size, this amounted to only 1/20th or 1/30th of its total flesh and blood. The 3 minions began devouring the flesh frantically again. Within 5 minutes, they had crammed the entire mass into the bottomless pits of their stomachs. This time, not only did they regenerate all the missing limbs, but their bellies bulged out like enormous bags filled with food. Clearly, their digestion couldn't keep up with their consumption. Meanwhile, the battle for the mutants' flesh and blood continued unabated, with the various mutants, attracted by the smell, adding to the chaos. But Liu Ming casually dispatched a few more clueless monsters, creating a small restricted zone in the center of the battlefield. As long as he didn't try to grab the flesh and blood, few mutants would attack him. After a short wait, the 3 minions' bellies finally returned to normal, deflated. Their skin, pale as corpses, gradually darkened, as if a hardened stratum corneum had grown from their bodies. Evolved. Liu Ming muttered to himself. The stratum corneum is one of the hallmark features of mutants. Whether swift or deformed, even capable and lord-type mutants grow a cuticle, their natural armor, comparable in effectiveness to ironclad armor, effectively protecting against firearms and cold weapons. This is one reason why ordinary people find it so difficult to deal with mutants. In medieval warfare, they are the equivalent of armored knights, while you're just a peasant wielding a sword. The bodies of the 3 ordinary cannibal corpses grew increasingly darker, and their newly grown arms rapidly twisted and deformed, like a molten iron being hammered. A middle-sized soldier's arm bones bent slightly, curving into the arc of a sword blade. Then, black cuticle instantly covered his entire arm, forming a sharp blade on one side. It looked incredibly sharp, and even a few casual swings could create a whirring sound that sliced through the air. An F-class, blade-like, deformed mutant with 2 arms. Another, noticeably stronger and taller, clenched his palms into fists. A dense layer of stratum corneum formed on his fists, instantly enveloping them. The cannibal's palms eventually transformed into colossal inseparable fist hammers, almost as large as his head, resembling both a shield and a warhammer. An F-class shield hammer deformed mutant with 2 arms. Finally, the flesh on the arms and back of the weakest of the minnows rapidly peeled away, revealing a barrage of white bones. A series of crackling sounds echoed as his bones snapped, and black stratum corneum rapidly covered the detached areas, forming an organ resembling a cannon barrel. The muzzle was a sharp, broken, white bone stump. An F-class bone spur cannon barrel deformed mutant. Looking at his 3 mutant minions, Liu Ming patted them on the shoulders and praised them with satisfaction. They look pretty good. It's worth the trip. Although the combat power of F-class mutants is now not much different from that of ordinary people in his eyes, cannibal corpses, which are ubiquitous and have no obvious features, are still very convenient for assassinations and killing people, because there is no need to worry about suspicion. PS. Catch up on yesterday's second update. I was in a bad mood yesterday, so I was not in good shape. I hope my brothers will forgive me. Chapter 130, Remarks on the release. Before I knew it, the debut novel by the flop Fengsha was finally available. The road ahead has been bumpy, and I've struggled to persevere. It was the support of my brothers and sisters, 1 vote, 1 tip, 1 comment, that has repeatedly rekindled my confidence and brought me to this point. These brothers and sisters truly make Fengsha feel not alone, both in writing and in life. Because there are so many names who have silently supported Fengsha, I'm afraid to miss even a single one, so I won't mention any specific names. I used to say that Fengsha, a nerdy, non-fat friend, didn't have many friends, but now I feel like I still have quite a few, most of whom I met through this book. If they all came to my wedding, they'd probably fill a table. But now that it's available, what should be a joyous occasion is a bit of a sadness. Many friends might say I'm such a jerk, feeling sad that I'm starting to charge for my work. But that's not the case. What does the launch mean? Everyone can see the flop of Fengsha's debut novel, with less than 5,000 copies. The fact that it occasionally surpasses tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of copies is entirely due to the dedicated support of these brothers and sisters. But with so few readers, how much money can you make? I guess it's far less than what Fengsha could earn if he worked honestly. But just because they are going to charge for the book, many book lovers are leaving Fengsha and going to pirated websites to read it. I wonder if we'll have the chance to see it again. Fengsha doesn't blame you brothers who have always supported Dragon Breeder. Back in middle school, Fengsha's pocket money wasn't enough for internet fees, so how could he afford to read legitimate books? He also read pirated books, but only later, when he had more money, did he start subscribing to legitimate books to support the author. But Fengsha's only hope is that the brothers who left home to read pirated books will remember to come back often. Even if they don't vote or subscribe, leaving comments and a few words of support will make Fengsha happy. Separation is always painful, and Fengsha really doesn't want to be separated. Enough of the sadness, let's talk about other things. Many of my friends first encountered Fengsha on Kidian.com, but many others discovered his books on Calredding. Fengsha feels an equally deep sense of gratitude towards his friends on both platforms, especially those on Calredding. Since Fengsha's book wasn't first published there, it never received any recommendations. Initially, Fengsha wasn't particularly interested in Calredding, and wasn't even aware that his own book was being serialized there after signing. As a complete newcomer, I was completely clueless about everything. It wasn't until I saw Calredding's fans repeatedly recommending it, discovered the Calredding logo in the backend data, and downloaded Calredding, that I realized how much support he had received there, and began following it myself. Even so, the fact that we met through the vast sea of books is truly a gift from heaven. Fengsha is a believer in fate. Speaking of Kidian, why did Fengsha so carefully decide to publish his book there? It all goes back to when Fengsha started reading online novels in junior high. Almost every great writer he'd ever followed had their work serialized on Gideon. In Fengsha's eyes, Gideon holds a profound position in the online literary world, not Fengsha Chu. See explanation below. I'm sure veteran bookworms are well aware of how many renowned online writers Gideon has nurtured. Although some have since left Gideon for reasons unknown to Fengsha, it's hard to count how many classic online novels this platform has produced. While it has its shortcomings, and Fengsha has criticized it, its contributions to the online literature industry will be indelible, as long as the profession of online writer exists. He truly deserves the title of industry leader. Consider the countless pirated online sites and books online. Authors receive no compensation, and, in turn, lose many legitimate readers. Yet, it's Gideon that sustains these often penniless authors, allowing them to at least write with peace of mind and a secure living. To be fair, if it weren't for this website, many of its well-known and excellent works would have long since flopped. Fengsha, who has been on the road to failure, knows this all too well. This is why Fengsha ultimately chose Gideon to begin writing books. It's not the size of the platform or the benefits, but the passion for writing is undeniably strong. As long as those great writers stick around, there will undoubtedly be a steady stream of failed writers like Fengsha, drawn to the platform, and embarking on their own writing journeys. Fengsha is deeply grateful for this platform. Whether you curse or complain, I can't forget my gratitude. Gideon has allowed me to grow and form a network of close friends. Whether it's Gideon or Cal Redding, those who remain here are my soulmates, confidants, and even my bread and butter. Please keep me company. My gratitude is beyond words, and I can only repay you with even more impressive works in the future. These few words express my sincere gratitude. Chapter 131. Using barbarians to control barbarians. The Wild Legion. After all three mutant minions had completed their evolution, Liu Ming led them quickly out of the increasingly bloody market. While the minions were still evolving, as mutants approaching C rank, or even peak D rank, arrived to join the fray, Liu Ming felt increasingly compelled to distance himself from the vortex of mutants vying for evolutionary opportunities. After all, he hadn't even brought his dragon pet with him, and if a C rank mutant came along to claim a share of the spoils, he'd be hard pressed to handle it. 10 minutes later, on the road several kilometers away from the horror market, Liu Ming, walking along with three distinct mutants, looked a bit puzzled. After all, the sight of a human being stalked by three man-eating monsters seemed odd. He wondered, what if he and his cannibal minions encountered some clueless survivor and were mistaken for a monster and attacked? Should he kill them? Or should he? However, he didn't want to kill people at random. To prevent such a horrific scene, Liu Ming decided to find a broken down car and drive his three men back himself. Indeed, his plan was to take his three cannibal serpents back to the vicinity of Chengdan railway station and have them secretly patrol the area around the station. At the very least, they would ensure that ordinary mutants didn't wander into the area and harm anyone. It was a variation of using barbarians to combat barbarians. Just as Liu Ming had spotted a powerful imported SUV and was about to approach it with his men, the roar of an engine emanated from the far end of the highway. He frowned and glanced over to see a convoy of vehicles, led by heavy trucks painted red and blue, speeding towards him. Like a roaring monster on the congested road, the trucks slammed into the vehicles blocking their path, sending them careening, and even flipping them sideways. They quickly cleared a path for the convoy behind them, effectively fulfilling their role as pioneers. Optimus Prime? Liu Ming's eyes flickered with surprise as he gazed at the heavy-duty truck. At first glance, the truck bore a striking resemblance to the Peterbilt 389 Super Heavy truck, the prototype for Optimus Prime from the Transformers film. The main difference was the identical red and blue paint scheme. But when Liu Ming squinted his eyes and took a closer look, he noticed an inverted triangle on the front, resembling a triangular icon split into three segments. The logo revealed it was a modified Foton Norman Est, a legendary domestic heavy-duty truck. He was already familiar with various vehicles, and in later life, he typically changed his vehicle every month or two. Whenever danger arose in the wilderness, temporary transportation like cars would often break down, forcing him to return on a beast pet. He primarily used the truck as a means of transport, as the truck's carrying capacity was still far greater than that of a beast pet. Furthermore, the rarity and cost of space props meant that a level 3 beast tamer like him could only contemplate and imagine them. In a year or so, this ominous heavy-duty truck would become a valuable means of transportation within the safe zone. After all, until the safe zone's industrial system is fully developed and production can resume, or even progress further, scavenging broken down vehicles is the only way for evolved classes to obtain transportation. In the early days of the apocalypse, when some demon hunters ventured out without completing their missions and finding little, returning with a well-maintained heavy-duty truck could bring in a small fortune. The largest truck Liu Ming ever drove in his later life was an armored jangling light truck, one of those ubiquitous pickup trucks with JMC printed on the front. After all, he was a lone ranger and didn't need a vehicle with more cargo capacity or space. But now, with his magical camera, he no longer needed a truck. Having a spatial treasure is a real convenience. He chuckled at the thought of those demon hunters in later generations whizzing around the safe zone exits in their trucks. Squeak. A heavy truck screeched to a halt in front of a medium-sized supermarket about 200 or 300 meters away from Liu Ming. The vehicles following it also stopped. When all the vehicles had stopped, Liu Ming could clearly see a large, flamboyantly painted wild character in sand yellow paint on the truck's hull. It seemed to be some kind of unique insignia. Every vehicle in the convoy behind the truck bore the same design. Seeing the insignia, Liu Ming's eyes flashed coldly, and his tone, somewhat icy, forced through his teeth. 4 words. Wild Legion. In 3 years, the Wild Legion's name would be renowned throughout Wuling. Their recruitment slogan, "No one but the rich and powerful," was undeniably arrogant. However, they had the right to be arrogant. Their leader, a top 10 demon hunting group in the Wuling City safe zone, relied on his background and family connections to even confront the leader of the top demon hunting group, the Sandstorm Sword Saint, in several clashes. He Jiajin, leader of the Wild Demon Hunters, was the honorary president of the Wuling Wild Club in peacetime. His subordinates consisted of a group of wealthy second generations from Wuling City, along with well-heeled airgun and crossbow enthusiasts. Besides their lavish spending, their hobbies included tinkering with powerful bows and crossbows, and modifying muscle cars. In the early days of the apocalypse, these individuals quickly gained a foothold with their modified bows and crossbows, with many even becoming evolved professionals. Their power grew by recruiting wealthy and powerful young members. However, it must be acknowledged that these wealthy young men were reckless and erring in the apocalypse. Rumors arose that they were responsible for the shocking theft of the military weapons depot in the safe zone, but no evidence had ever been found. Furthermore, their connections to nearly every powerful figure in the safe zone allowed them to remain unpunished. While Liu Ming's involvement in the wilderness restricted area was irrelevant, he repeatedly encountered Wild Legion members who had also accepted missions and had their items stolen. Even after traveling through time for 10 years, he still harbored a grudge. Although he knew that those who had repeatedly clashed with him were most likely not the original members of the Wild Legion before him, the Wild Legion was divided into the inner army and the outer army. The inner army consisted entirely of the so-called second-generation rich children of the Yamen, the true core members of the Wild Legion, while the outer army consisted of their lackeys, a group of shady hands who secretly handled their dirty work. It was these lackeys who repeatedly offended him, relying on their power, but there was also a reason why he couldn't even defeat the elite of these lackeys in his future life. Now that the heavens had allowed these creatures to appear before him, how could he not confront them and justify the trap their lackeys had set for him in some future dimension? "Go inside and wait for me." Liu Ming pointed to a nearby clothing store and ordered his 3 mutant minions to hide while he sneaked towards a supermarket. As for why he didn't bring his minions with him, it was because he was now human and the leader of a shelter with thousands of survivors under his command. If word leaked that he was allied with the cannibals, humanity's mortal enemies, he would undoubtedly become a public enemy. He didn't care whether he became a public enemy, but if the matter of his 3 minions scared off the men he'd worked so hard to gather, he had no choice but to give up. Of course, he could simply kill all those who saw his mutant minions, but the problem was that Liu Ming wasn't prepared to kill them all. While they were vicious, they didn't all deserve death. At least they were a fighting force against the monsters. After all, clearing Wuling City and turning most of the occupied areas into a safe zone would require a concerted effort from all parties. By making sure they gained nothing this time and teaching them a lesson, he could also avenge his initial attack. PS. 5 updates will be coming tonight, and here's the first one. Chapter 132 Armed Robbery, Men and Women. Members of the Wild Crossbow Air Gun Club, now the precursor to the Wild Legion, began to disembark. Young men, armed with military-grade crossbows and modified air guns, entered the supermarket in trance, led by a muscular man in riot gear. Seeing this, Liu Ming, hiding under a rooftop by the road, quietly crept over. Seeing the armed men in the remaining vehicles shift their gazes toward the surrounding road after their companions had entered the supermarket, Liu Ming suddenly erupted, exerting force with his feet, accelerating like a phantom into the supermarket in trance. Though his speed was almost invisible to the naked eye, the rush of air in the still air still caught the attention of the remaining personnel. "Old Jew? Did you have something over there just now?" A man in the driver's seat of a heavy truck, holding a composite crossbow and observing the situation outside the window, suddenly asked his passenger in the passenger seat with a puzzled look. The man in the passenger seat wasn't holding a crossbow, but a modified air rifle. However, his wasn't loaded with ineffective BBs, but with real metal bullets. While not as powerful as a real firearm, it was comparable to the legendary homemade rifle. He'd just been looking in the direction of the supermarket, but now a look of confusion crossed his face. "I didn't see it clearly." He'd just seen a shadow flash by, but couldn't make out what it was, or even tell if it was just a blunder or a real thing. "Focus. The boss and the others are in there. This isn't like hunting game in peacetime. This is about living on the edge of a knife, snatching food from the jaws of a monster," the man in the driver's seat said solemnly. While they might be considered useless by ordinary people, they were definitely not completely useless. Just look at how prosperous they've become in just a few days of the apocalypse, and how they've even driven a large group out to search for supplies. There were definitely more people searching for supplies in this existential crisis than just them. They'd encountered them many times in recent days. All the worthless weaklings perished along the way, and those with some strength had been plundered. Only a handful of individuals were strong enough to stand up to them and stop them from looting supplies. That raid resulted in casualties on both sides. Those individuals were all desperate criminals who had escaped Bishan prison after killing the guards during the catastrophe. Liu Ming naturally had no idea his infiltration had been discovered by two ordinary people, barely even professionals. Just now, a very fast, little rat slipped in. On the rooftop of a 7th floor house beside the highway, a young man wearing a leather jacket, pierced ears, and a punk hairstyle, listened intently to the intermittent voice coming from a walkie-talkie. Damn the apocalypse. Even a $3,000 imported walkie-talkie can barely get a signal. The punk youth, after struggling to hear the message, spat at the sky, cursing fiercely, as if his spit could dispel the strong electromagnetic field rumored to be disrupting all communications. "Got it, Shanzi. If he dares to come out, I promise to shoot him dead," he replied fiercely into the intercom, a smirk on his face. He picked up his meter-long, specially crafted crossbow and aimed it at the road below, his right eye fixed through the scope on the supermarket in trance. A sturdy young man beside him also took up his crossbow, which occasionally shone with a distinctive light, and aimed it downwards. A few dozen meters from the supermarket, atop a dense tree, a sturdy man in an army green camouflage jacket, his figure barely visible to passers-by, cradled his weapon, a jet black divine bow, and gazed towards the direction Liu Ming had just entered. Clearly, more than just the two people had spotted Liu Ming's presence. It must be said that the wealthy second generation who have made such a name for themselves in later generations are well deserved. Liu Ming had already followed the Wild Club members into the supermarket, where the place was in shambles. The meat section and cold storage, where all meat was stored, had been completely ravaged by cannibals who hadn't found any living people, leaving not even a single pig bone behind. The Wild Club's muscular leader, knowingly abandoning the vegetable section, led the group straight to the second floor's noodle section, where snacks, instant noodles, and other junk food were sold. While the monsters were hungry, they preferred meat, and would generally not touch such junk food, unless starving to death. What the group didn't anticipate was that a dark figure, even faster than them, emerged from behind, frantically snapping photos of everything with an antique camera. The sound of snaps echoed continuously. Liu Ming, completely disregarding his own energy consumption, packed as much as he could, determined not to leave a single edible hair behind. There's movement. Take cover. The leading man, clearly an evolved person with astonishing perception, had barely reached the first floor of the supermarket, where appliances, pots, and pans, and clothing and accessories were sold, when he heard the clicking of a magical camera on the second floor. His command caused everyone's hurried pace to pause, giving Liu Ming another opportunity to snap a few more incredible photos. By the time they reached the food section, carefully and cautiously, forming a back-to-back battle formation, they found every shelf completely stripped bare. Not a hair was left. Fuck you, immortal. Not a hair was left. What survivor group is this brutal? If I find you, I'll steal your underwear. A man with long grey hair standing beside the leading man picked up a piece of ham Liu Ming had left behind, angrily cursing and throwing it back. The leading man reached out and caught the ham. He removed the gloves from his riot gear and ripped open the ham wrapper, stuffing the whole thing into his mouth. He mumbled as he chewed, "It tastes damn good. Just finding a piece of ham is already pretty good." A 2-meter tall burly man behind him, seeing his boss enjoying his meal, grumbled, "Fuck, boss. We've killed so many monsters along the way. Even Abayo and Liu Jen were honorably wounded, and this time we didn't even get a hair. How can you be so calm?" The leading man gulped down the sausage, narrowed his eyes, and smiled. "Aching, what's the F***ing rush? We haven't finished searching yet. There's got to be something somewhere. Follow me." With that, he headed off in one direction. The others all followed him. In front of a locked iron gate, the leading man commanded a 2-meter tall burly man, "Kick it open. There's definitely something inside." The burly man lowered his door-like giant sword, barely larger than Frostfall. Immediately, he transformed into a humanoid Tyrannosaurus Rex and slammed into the iron gate. Bang, bang, bang. The pounding continued. The faint whispers of panicked humans could be heard from within. The burly man, overcome with excitement, stopped, picked up his giant sword from the ground, and shouted, "Get out of the way. I'm going to chop this door down." With that, he slashed at the iron gate. Bang. Ah. Ah. The sound of the iron gate splitting open was accompanied by 2 shrill screams. The door and the 2 figures flew backwards. The 2 survivors who had been holding the gate had clearly been severed by the giant sword, splitting into 4 pieces, dead on the spot. The people in the Wild Club looked at the strong man hacking people to death with a calm expression, as if they were used to it. But when they saw the mountains of supplies piled up inside the door, their eyes lit up, and they excitedly complimented the leader. "Boss is the boss. You are amazing. You found such a good place. Peas. Second update is here. Chapter 133 Fire Suppression. Spreading wings in the air." Beside him, a sturdy companion, also wielding a powerful crossbow, also wore a look of astonishment and doubt. He was a muscular man in a short-sleeved camouflage jacket, his exposed arms as thick as a normal man's thighs. While not an evolved class like the punk youth, he could still pull a powerful crossbow with his bare hands, requiring nearly 80 kilograms of tension. Furthermore, the Baal Plunderer, the American imported SWAT crossbow he wielded, had been modified by their boss. After the disaster, Mu Hao, the son of Wu Ling's richest man, and one of the spiritual leaders of their wild strong bow and strong crossbow air gun club, had evolved into a mysterious weaponsmith. The crossbows he modified, like the Baal Plunderer, rivaled the speed and destructive power of automatic firearms. Of course, this boss wasn't the man who had led the group into the supermarket, but another. Their club had 4 bosses in peacetime, all of them incredibly powerful figures. One tragically transformed into a monster during the disaster, but the other 3 continued to lead them step by step to the pinnacle of the apocalypse, or so he believed. As he thought about it, he spat out a mouthful of thick phlegm. He cautiously held his crossbow, his eyes darting around as he replied, "How should I know? This guy's really slippery." As he finished his words, a dark figure had already rushed upstairs and suddenly appeared at the rooftop entrance, less than 10 meters away. "Shoot!" the punk youth shouted anxiously. Two sturdy men wielding powerful crossbows simultaneously pulled the triggers. Several crisp twangs echoed, and several crossbow arrows shot straight at Liu Ming, who was right in front of them. The moment the arrows struck Liu Ming, a flash of silver light appeared, and an elliptical silver energy shield instantly enveloped him. The effects of his silver scale light armor were instantly activated. Bang, bang, bang. Each sharp arrow was deflected like steel. The silver energy shield flickered after repeated impacts, and it was likely that a few more direct blows would completely shatter it. However, Liu Ming had already pounced on the two men, and they had no chance to fire their crossbows. The fingertips of Liu Ming's right hand suddenly turned crimson. The punk youth, whom Liu Ming had spotted through his perceptive abilities as an F-class apex evolver, was first grabbed by the scalded hand. Then, as the muscular man pulled the trigger, attempting to save his friend, Liu Ming used the punk youth as a human shield. With a thud, the sharp arrow pierced through his body, sending a trail of blood spraying towards Liu Ming. Liu Ming frowned at the powerful penetrating power. This was definitely a divinely gifted item, or even if it wasn't, it had been specially modified for the profession. The moment the crossbow bolt was released, he felt the energy ripples emanating from it. Behind Liu Ming, his wide crimson cloak, unfurling without a breeze, blocked his path. With a thud, the arrow deflected directly off the cloak, leaving not even a scratch. The next second, Liu Ming's right arm was engulfed in molten lava. He held the punk youth, whose throat was gurgling and foaming with blood, and charged directly at the muscular man, who was still preparing to fire his second arrow. A scream followed, and the 1000-degree hot molten arm, like a vice, gripped his neck and lifted him high. The intense heat instantly charred the neck of this mere ordinary man. With his vocal organs damaged, he couldn't even scream, only whimpering through his nose. His distorted face betrayed the immense pain he was enduring. Meanwhile, the punk youth, whose abdomen had been pierced, was still cursing with a defiant air. Liu Ming wasn't in a rush to kill him. Seeing the muscular man, his neck completely carbonized, his spine softened, his head teetering, clearly on the verge of death, Liu Ming's fury and bloodlust faded somewhat. At least the bloodshot in his eyes had faded, and clarity had returned. "How did you find me?" Liu Ming asked curiously. Even if someone saw him transform into a shadow, they were certain he was an intruder, and could still wait for him to emerge. This meant they were absolutely certain he had entered the supermarket, and had precisely timed his exit. Only their leader, Heijun, the D-level evolved who had led the search for supplies, could track his speed, and predict his return. Unless they possessed special equipment or abilities, it would be difficult for anyone else to do so. Upon hearing this, the punk youth spat in Liu Ming's face, cursing, "Kill me if you dare. I'm a bastard if I don't." The moment the spit flew, Liu Ming unleashed a breath of fire. The blazing flames not only vaporized the saliva into gas, but also poured directly into the punk youth's eyes, nostrils, and slightly open mouth. The next moment, a human-shaped torch blazed in Liu Ming's hand. Looking at the burning figure before him, who, like their companions, showed no reaction after hacking away at two ordinary survivors, Liu Ming remained unmoved. Throwing the torch, which was already emitting the stench of a burnt corpse, to the ground, Liu Ming stretched out his 5 fingers and crushed the other man's head like a can. He picked up the 2 crossbows and stored them in his magic camera. Without even a glance at the 2 corpses, he turned and headed downstairs. However, just as Liu Ming was about to leave the corridor, he was intercepted by the man in the camouflage jacket and his men who had been hiding in the treetops. The man blocking the door fired 3 arrows into the corridor with a longbow, forcing Liu Ming to retreat and hide again in the corridor. It wasn't that he didn't want to force his way through, but the power of these 3 arrows at close range was clearly at the late E level. Even with his own strength, he would definitely be penetrated without using any defensive abilities. After all, D-level evolvers have improved physical fitness compared to E-level evolvers, not their defensive capabilities. The attacks of E-level evolvers can also penetrate the defenses of D-level evolvers. Moreover, in a narrow passageway only wide enough for one person, there was nowhere to hide. Whoosh, bang, bang, The crackle of arrows and modified air guns rang out incessantly, crumbling a small portion of the wall where Liu Ming was hiding. This destructive power was primarily due to the might of the arrows fired by the late rank evolver. Each arrow could rip apart and shatter a large section of the concrete wall. The power of his arrows was countless times greater than that of his top archer, Liu Zeduo. Seeing the fierce firepower of these men, Liu Ming immediately abandoned his plan to break out of the hallway and headed straight for the upstairs corridor window. As he walked, Liu Ming muttered to himself, "Is this an old man who's too old to hang himself? I was just about to kill these two and leave." Reaching the window, Liu Ming leaped out. He was caught red-handed by several Wild Club members who were guarding the window. Their faces were filled with murderous intent. The leader raised his powerful crossbow, aimed it at Liu Ming, and sneered, "We've been waiting for you. Shoot him." With that, they frantically pulled the triggers, and arrows flew towards Liu Ming like a swarm of locusts. Liu Ming was plummeting through the air, and just when everyone expected the crossbow bolts to pierce him and turn him into a hedgehog, his red cape, rustling in the swift current, suddenly unfolded like wings. A pair of fiery red wings suddenly appeared behind him, and with a flutter, Liu Ming dodged the incoming arrows in an uncanny arc. PS. 4th update here. The 5th update might be after midnight, so feel free to get some sleep and read it tomorrow. Chapter 134. Whoever robs will be left with nothing. Holy shit. What's that noise? The crowd still moving supplies inside the supermarket was suddenly startled by the sound of air guns and bows and arrows fired by the convoy left behind. The grey-haired man picked up the intercom and roared, "Mad Wolf. What's with that plane over there?" Mad Wolf was the nickname of the punk youth killed by Liu Ming. Mad Wolf, who usually considered himself the grey-haired man's underling, remained silent for a long moment after hearing his roars. Everyone sensed something was amiss. "Something's happening. Let's go." He jarred and shouted, his face changing slightly as he caught a glimpse of a red figure fluttering its wings in midair, nimbly dodging arrows. He rushed to the window, raised his powerful black crossbow, and unleashed several arrows into the air. "Huang-san, Yin-le, you two stay here and watch over the supplies. Everyone else, follow me," the grey-haired man ordered, and then he led the others in pursuit of their leader. A dense crowd gathered at the window, attacking the figure in the sky. Liu Ming was dodging the attack in front of him when he was caught off guard by the sudden attack from behind. Dozens of crossbow bolts were hurled at him at breakneck speed, making dodging impossible. It would have been possible to dodge just a few. Flame Dragon Shield. The Flame Dragon wing cloak instantly unfolded, completely enveloping Liu Ming like a vast cloak. Then, a flaming dragon with wings on its back flew out from the cloak, coiling around it. Countless arrows pinged and thudded against the dragon's body and wings, but none of them could penetrate the cloak, let alone injure Liu Ming. When the pings faded, the flaming dragon vanished. Liu Ming's cold gaze darted towards the direction of the attack within the supermarket. Dozens of evil dragon spells materialized before him and launched in unison in that direction. "Scatter and get out of the way," he jarred and shouted anxiously as he watched the attack, emitting strange energy waves, approach. He quickly led his men in a desperate scattering. A massive crater had appeared where they had just stood, shattering the entire second floor slab, revealing a direct view of the ground floor. Two of their companions, unable to evade the impact, were also blasted through the slab by the explosion, sending them careening from the second floor to the ground. Their bones were shattered by the immense force, their bodies reduced to pulp. The others who were caught in the crossfire were also injured. "Fuck. Follow me." He Jarjan's face was furious. He had rained arrows upon the enemy, yet they were still alive and kicking. Yet a single wave of attacks had killed two of his companions and injured no fewer than 10. After unleashing the evil dragon spell, Liu Ming ignored the bandits attacking from behind. After all, even an early stage C-rank monster would be injured if they withstood dozens of evil dragon spells. How could these creatures avoid the attack without paying a price? He flapped his flaming wings and soared towards the ground. A few of the men, still enjoying their shots, suddenly woke up when they saw Liu Ming soaring like a flaming demon and scurried towards the house. But their legs clearly couldn't match Liu Ming's swooping speed. His right hand, the fingers stained blood red, his left swathed in molten lava, he swooped down like a hawk stalking a hare. One man was torn into a bloody mess by the deadly crimson force, while another, his head held by a giant hand of molten lava, burned to a charred corpse. The splatter of flesh and blood all over their companions, further accelerating their flight. They'd thought they were just a few men trying to pick off a missing person, but they'd actually intercepted a prehistoric crocodile. Just as Liu Ming was about to attack the remaining fleeing men, the late E-class man in camouflage had already led his men from the house. Liu Ming's mouth twisted into a sinister grin, and he was about to unleash his evil dragon curse. But the moment he tried to mobilize his mental energy, a splitting headache, like a cracking pain, ripped his skull apart. This was the result of forcing his mental energy toward exhaustion. The excruciating pain made him pause, and in that moment, a barrage of arrows pelted him. At this critical moment, a fiery dragon once again swirled around Liu Ming. Fortunately, the item's ability didn't consume his mental energy. Braving a hail of arrows, Liu Ming charged forward swiftly. Since ranged attacks were out of the question, he prepared to charge head-on, forcing the ranged specialists into melee combat and finishing them off. Just as he was about to reach the camouflage-clad man, still drawing his bow and arrow, and tear him apart, a sturdy man over 2 meters tall, clad in silver grey steel armor, blocked him with a massive sword. Boom. With a resounding crash, Chang Yi, who had been ordered to fetch the 2 girls, was sent flying over 10 meters, knocking down his companions behind him. Liu Ming, however, simply stopped. Damn. He's 3 times stronger than the boss. Chang Yi wiped the blood from his mouth and exclaimed in shock at his now deflated breastplate. He was a top tier E rank heavy armored warrior, even in full armor, and yet he was instantly wounded. Where on earth did this monster come from? But the situation didn't allow him to dwell on it. He turned and scrambled to his feet, continuing to block his companions. He was the only one who could hold off the monster now. Behind him were the ranged professionals who remained, making it impossible for them to stop him. Liu Ming's killing intent had largely faded. Looking at the warriors standing ready before him, a flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. Heavy armored war demon Chang Yi, another peak level 6th rank warrior from his memory, a mere step away from the ultimate powerhouse. Looking at the others, who had completely abandoned their attacks and adopted a passive defensive stance, Liu Ming muttered to himself, slightly distracted, have I unknowingly become this powerful? Even the Wild Legion heavy armored war demons, known for their tough skin and flesh, couldn't withstand a single blow from me. Seeing the monstrous creature before him seemingly no longer intending to attack, Chang Yi's nerves eased. He quickly restrained his companions who were still about to attack, fearing they would further provoke him. This monster was beyond their reach. Whether to fight or to make peace would depend on waiting for the boss to lead his men out. When he charged and arrived, the first thing he saw were the bodies of his 2 companions and the others completely overwhelmed by Liu Ming's attack. The crowd behind him erupted in excitement, brandishing their weapons and attempting to attack Liu Ming. He charged and, however, held them back. Using his clairvoyance to examine Liu Ming, he said gravely, "Huoju, I can't see through him. What do you think?" Alas, a C-rank powerhouse. See if we can call a halt. The gray-haired man sighed, a look of pain on his face. 2 days ago, while searching for supplies, they encountered a C-rank monster, a winged humanoid demon. It took over a dozen lives to repel it. That was 1/5 of the club's current members. No one wanted this to happen again. Enough had already been lost, and they were all their own people. Although several companions had perished this time, it was better than losing a dozen more and still not being able to defeat the enemy. He judged and gritted his teeth, his face grim, and said, "This time, when I return, I'm going to give my all to reach C rank." A few minutes later, Liu Ming smiled at Hijajin, a master ranked among the 54 supremes of the later ages, and said, "Your car is quite nice." Hijajin's eyes twitched at that, and he sternly said, "If you like it, take it. Then I'd be remiss not to." Liu Ming laughed and walked towards the black Ford Raptor behind the heavy truck. He hadn't expected Hijajin and his group to possess such a fine vehicle. This car boasted more horsepower than a Hummer H2, and more importantly, was more rugged and crash resistant, practically requiring no modifications. As he approached, the Raptor's driver had already obediently handed him the keys at the grey-haired man's beckoning, but his eyes were filled with anger. "Both girls, come with me." The two were led downstairs and witnessed a fierce battle between Liu Ming and the murderer they considered a monster. They had assumed Liu Ming was a monster, but he turned out to be human. After the ceasefire, the two girls begged Liu Ming to take them away, revealing everything about Ijajin and his men's murders and the storage of supplies. After hearing their stories, Liu Ming decided to take them along. They were two interesting people. Under the murderous gazes of the Wild Legion, Liu Ming roared off in his Ford Raptor. Ijajin, looking frustrated, roared, "That bastard's finally gone. Everyone, get up and move your stuff." Unbeknownst to them, Liu Ming had driven the car around a bend, out of sight, and then stopped. He quickly got out of the car and unfurled his flaming wings. With a few flaps, he was back in front of everyone else, reaching the supermarket and the warehouse the two girls had mentioned. He easily knocked out the two shabby-looking men who had stayed behind, and in a flash, he cleared out the entire warehouse. This time, nothing was left behind. PS. Here's yesterday's 5th update. Yesterday, I fell asleep while typing. Brothers, please forgive me, there are 3 more updates to come. Chapter 135, The Wall of Ashes. Amidst the furious roars and curses of the Wild Legion, Liu Ming had already completed his mission and fled, concealing his achievements and fame. After unlocking the car door with the electronic key and scrambling into the driver's seat, the two girls didn't question him. Both girls were still drenched in shock. When Liu Ming left, he had locked the car doors and the rear child locks with the electronic key for safety reasons. The two girls were terrified that, if he were to remain away for a long time, they would suffocate and become locked in the car. However, having little experience with cars, they didn't know that the driver's door could be opened. Even if Liu Ming were to remain away for a long time, they could still climb into the driver's seat, open the door, and escape. Using a telepathic connection, Liu Ming summoned his 3 mutant minions, who hid their bodies and followed closely behind the Raptor, heading towards the train station. Halfway back, Liu Ming encountered Sumi and Zilirong, who were looking for him. Sumi, now reduced to the size of a kitten, lay listlessly, lifeless, on Zilirong's head, allowing him to carry her forward, heading directly in Liu Ming's direction. Liu Ming, moved and amused by the sight of his 2 dragon pets from afar, quickly stopped the car and tucked Sumi inside. Zilirong followed without hesitation. Due to the poor road conditions, the drive took Liu Ming twice as long as it would have taken him to run an hour before he reached the train station. The men, busy moving bricks and building a wall, looked puzzled as the nearly 2-meter tall, 6-meter long pickup truck, a silent, steel behemoth, approached. However, they remained calm, as they all knew monsters couldn't drive. The combatants, however, all eyed the approaching pickup with caution. Liu Zeduo and several ranged archers had already drawn their bows, ready to fire if it got any closer. Liu Ming's eyelids twitched, a faint sense of pain in his balls. He had just been blasted by dozens of men with powerful bows and crossbows, and now, returning, he was being pointed at by his own men with bows and arrows. With both hands firmly gripping the steering wheel, his foot still on the accelerator, he drove forward, gazing out the window. Zilirong, who had been running furiously on the road behind the car, now rushed over. "It's the boss. There's been a misunderstanding. Put it down. Put all your stuff down. The boss is back." Wow, an imported Ford F-150, the majesty of American muscle cars. The boss has made another great return. The hostile and wary faces of the crowd erupted in cheers upon seeing Liu Ming and Zilirong. As Liu Ming slowly parked the car, a group of male search team members gathered around the Ford Raptor. This pickup truck, not the most stylish or expensive in peacetime, now became everyone's dream car. If you're saying that in the apocalypse, people should drive Lamborghinis and Ferraris to escape in style, that's pure nonsense. "Get out," Liu Ming said, and jumped out. 2 girls also slowly emerged, looking uneasy as they watched a group of men whistling, cheering, and laughing incessantly surround them. Noticing their discomfort, Liu Ming shouted to the Flame Fortress craftsman, who was building a fortified wall of ashes with his chubby flame art spirit nearby. Gong Ruohan, I found 2 companions for you. Take a break, and take them for a walk. The 2 girls looked only a few years older than Gong Ruohan, around 19 or 20, the age when youth are most passionate and unconstrained by worldly rules. During the student movements of the Republican era, those who sacrificed their lives for the country and their people were mostly young people of this age. Otherwise, they wouldn't have the courage to denounce the Wild Legion, those thugs who, while not necessarily brutal, also showed no regard for human life. Gong Ruohan came running over, looking up and smiling. Liu Ming, the ash wall will probably be completely completed by this evening. We originally thought it would take half a day longer, but those clods of earth of yours are so powerful, one can do the work of 30 or 40 people. After she finished speaking, her face was full of excitement, and she seemed to like the 4 clay golems very much. She showed anticipation and a little worry, and said pleadingly, if the ash wall is completed tonight, can you give me those 4 clods of earth? They are stupid and clumsy anyway, and they probably can't help you in a fight. What if they are damaged in a fight? They might as well work for me. Liu Ming looked at the progress of the construction of several walls, and nodded with satisfaction. Now he was very sure that it was an extremely correct thing for him to hand over the precious profession of flame barrier craftsman to this little girl. Faced with this modest request, he nodded and agreed. As long as you can complete it tonight as I expect, I'll give it to you. Gong Ruohan cheered and ran towards a half-finished fortified wall, completely forgetting Liu Ming's request to guide the 2 girls through the surroundings. Liu Ming laughed and shook his head, only to call on the gossipy Lin Mimui to complete the task. Although the 2 girls lacked much combat prowess and showed little potential for evolution, Liu Ming admired certain qualities and actions in them. Like Wang Suqing, whom he had met earlier, they were different from ordinary people, not in terms of individual strength, but in their spirit and other aspects. In ancient times, such people would be called Yiren, meaning unusual individuals, those with exceptional talents. Boyan Shuki, who died on Mount Shaoyang after refusing to eat Zhao grain. Jikang, who sang Wanglingson at his execution, and Wen Xiangxiang, who remained steadfast in his determination to die despite being appointed prime minister and given a title of nobility, who could say their actions were foolish. Although Liu Ming doubted his ability, he nonetheless felt a certain respect. Just as Liu Ming's thoughts were drifting, Gong Ruohan hurried over, shouting, Liu Ming, no bricks. Got it, he said, with a wry smile. He mounted his sumi and headed straight for the brickyard, which he hadn't yet emptied, to haul in another batch of bricks and stones. He truly was destined for a life of toil. In the evening, beneath the dim sky, a 4-meter high wall, gleaming with a red crystal-like sheen, encircled the entire train station. Over 20,000 square meters, the wall encircled both the train tracks and the road. This was a miraculous wall, erected in just 3 days, from the start of construction to its complete completion. Thousands gathered before the ash-clad wall. Liu Ming, give it a name. Gong Ruohan said, his eyes sparkling. Gong Ruohan generously gave Liu Ming the naming rights for his virgin wall, a nearly 2-kilometer-long structure. It was he who had given him the opportunity to become a master craftsman of the blazing wall. As time passed since his transformation into the master class, Gong Ruohan increasingly appreciated the preciousness of this divine grace. Liu Ming, observing the expectant gazes of the crowd, looked up at the sky, feeling somewhat helpless. He was being asked to come up with a name. Was he going to come up with another name comparable to Ji Zheirang? Finally, seeing no further delay, he casually suggested, since any enemy who touches it will be reduced to ash, let's call it the Wall of Ashes. P.S. Here's a first update. Also, to celebrate the birth of the 4th captain, Yan Yang, there will be an extra update tomorrow, a total of 4. I would also like to thank Ghost Feng Dao, Suife, Waldru, Tan Mo, Gentleman of the Men's Tribe, Bao Ang Teng Fui Papapa, Ukti, Ice Angel, Tao Leren Sheng, Idiot Likes Reading, Zin Mengayan, Shiandi Zuan Huang 5901, AI, Book Friends 161,220,235,445,093. 998. Zio Deseng, Yan Yang, Pio Xianlf, Zichen Jinxiao, Mo Moming, Leo Adian, Zhu Feng KK, and Wu Kui for their support. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Archer's Heart, Bloodline Leap. It was a sleepless night. After more than 10 days of fear, since the apocalypse began, the survivors finally dared to walk safely after dark on the land that once belonged to humanity, protected by the Wall of Ashes, 12 stone forts and arrow towers, and the giant cats that hunted monsters outside. They could now speak loudly, no longer fearing being snatched away and devoured by a sudden monster. Even the Wall of Ashes' only entrance still lacked a proper gate, as Gong Ruohan required it to be made of fine steel, worthy of her impeccable work. Since sufficient steel was unavailable immediately, the Wall of Ashes, just wide enough for a light truck, temporarily lacked a gate. However, with 2 towers in front and several ferocious, bloodthirsty, serrated vines coiling behind, the lack of a gate was not a significant threat to the safety of the entire fortress. In a warm atmosphere, everyone once again built a bonfire. However, this time, no monsters wandered in until the bonfire dinner was over. The E-level and above monsters near the train station had been largely eliminated, and the lower level monsters couldn't even break through the giant cat's defenses, let alone enter the square and attack anyone. 2 new girls, Huo Qingwei and Yin Shuangsu, were freshmen at Wuling University. They were working part-time at the supermarket when the disaster occurred. They escaped the disaster by quickly following the supermarket staff and hiding in the supply warehouse, where they relied on the mountains of supplies to survive until today. However, they didn't dare to step out of the warehouse until the vicious villains appeared, broke down the door, and killed the survivors who had taken good care of them. Only then did they step out of the warehouse for the first time since the apocalypse. Upon arriving, the 2 women felt the stark difference between the 2 places. Although the supermarket warehouse offered the same comforts as here, life there was filled with fear. No one knew when a monster would burst through the door and devour them. Every day was filled with worry and fear. In this atmosphere of dread, over the past 10 days, bizarre events unfolded one after another. A married man and woman even hooked up, hiding in a corner, using sexual intercourse to dispel their fear. Every memory of this incident made them sick to their stomachs. One man even attempted to grope them, but thanks to Sister Liu and Brother Zhang, 2 of the most influential survivors and the first to suggest hiding in the supply warehouse, they escaped their clutches. Remembering how those disgusting creatures had escaped the thugs that morning, and instead, the 2 kind-hearted individuals who had stood guard at the door and tried to protect everyone perished, brought them to tears. However, Liu Ming, who chattered away their sorrow, recounting how they met Liu Ming and the origins of the survivor shelter, told them a story. She recounted the story of Sumi and her former master, moving them to tears. They could hardly believe that the monsters they had once considered monsters could have such a deep connection with humans. They also learned the story of the enormous ochre-colored monster snoring beside Liu Ming, how it had stolen Jeshingnan, Liu Ming's tortuous rescue, and how he had finally brought back the monster known as Jizerang. Lin Mimu's embellished recounting of this story had them both bursting into laughter. They also learned how, after failing to rescue Chu Huxin's family, Liu Ming had led the others through the SWAT and armed police. This story filled them with admiration. After hearing Lin Mimu's story, and looking at the people gathered around the campfire, enjoying a meal together in the apocalypse, they smiled at each other, as if thankful they had begged Liu Ming to bring them to this place. There was something they had never seen before in the post-apocalyptic world, the power of hope. Liu Ming was fiddling with 2 crossbows he had looted from the Wild Legion. Both were camouflaged military crossbows, but one was a standard military crossbow, the other had been modified by a weapon craftsman. Handing 2 crossbows to Lu Zeduo, Liu Ming instructed, find 2 people with good eyesight, preferably with a talent for shooting. I need you to quickly assemble a team of ranged specialists. Liu Zeduo, who was tucking into his meal, saw the food and words Liu Ming handed him, put down his bowl and chopsticks, and exclaimed with ecstasy, "Boss, I'll see to it." Lately, he had been feeling increasingly relegated to the background, as had the archers under his command. Their ranged attacks were neither powerful nor dense enough, and they always needed a group of melee specialists to protect them from a swarm of monsters. They were practically useless. The construction of the fortified wall and the sudden appearance of the arrow tower had ignited a fire of ambition within him. After all, as a serious evolved specialist, how could he be reduced to a useless role? Archer should be the main force in battle. After receiving the two crossbows, Liu Zeduo immediately ran to Chu Huxin and several other archers and crossbowmen under his command to discuss the matter. Liu Ming's gaze drifted to the darkness beyond the gate behind him. Sumi was leading the giant cats in the night, clearing out the dangers before the night fell. "Boss, what's wrong?" Liu Huchen, who was bragging to a group of people, asked hurriedly as Liu Ming stood up and headed out of the square. "Nothing," Liu Ming replied, then walked out without looking back. He noticed that after a series of battles, Sumi, who had evolved into a purple shadow flame-tailed cat, was getting closer to a higher level of power, especially since emerging from the secret realm of the crystal cave. Whenever the giant cats went hunting, it would almost always follow them, both to hunt powerful monsters and to hone its skills in battle, even though there were almost no monsters nearby that could withstand a serious attack. Liu Ming also wanted to lend a hand to his dragon pet, using his skills as a dragon keeper. Stepping from the bonfire glow within the wall of ashes into the darkness outside the gate, Liu Ming quickly found Sumi's direction and rushed over. A moment later, Sumi was seen pinning an owl-like flying evolutionary beast to the ground with her massive claws. The moment Liu Ming approached, Sumi unleashed a powerful blow, completely crushing the evolutionary beast's head. Then, she advanced on Liu Ming. Each step her massive claws left a bloody footprint on the ground. Dozens of giant cats surrounded her, making her look like a king descended from a bloody path. "Sumi, I'm not sure if this will work for you, but you're on the brink of evolution. I wanted to try and see if it could help you," Liu Ming said, placing his right hand on Sumi's head and gently stroking it. "Meow." Sumi meowed, nodding in affirmation. She licked the back of Liu Ming's hand, the barbs on her tongue tickling Liu Ming's face. Dragon bloodline transformation. This was Liu Ming's attempt, one of the three great talents of a dragon keeper, alongside dragon vein strengthening and intercommunication with all creatures. Liu Ming's physical prowess alone is now on par with that of a warrior of the same power level. This is not only due to the strengthening effects of the lava heart, but also primarily due to the constant strengthening effects of the dragon vein. Until now, aside from the astonishing effect of the dragon vein evolution upon contracting with the two dragon pets, the rest of a Dragon Tamer's abilities have seemed somewhat unworthy of its title as a high-level profession. Telepathy and communication perks can only be used as a means of communication. Communication with all things perk hasn't yet been fully explored, but it's likely to be similar. Affinity and influence perks have likely only been demonstrated through his relationship with his two dragon pets, which is closer than that of a typical tamer's pet, and through his initial taming of Sumi when she was still an evolved Siamese cat. As for dragon language, it's now a useless perk, as he's yet to encounter a creature truly capable of dragon language, and he's even less clear on its purpose. He's also never used dragon power taming even once. However, given that this was a high-level class, Liu Ming had every confidence that its three abilities, 3 talents, and 3 specialties were all powerful and far from useless. It was simply that he hadn't fully tapped them yet. In a flash, the dragon bloodline transformation quietly took effect. Liu Ming actively utilized this talent, and his hands on Sumi's head acted like a magnet attracting iron filings. Suddenly, stars and tiny specks of light burst from the air, quickly flying towards his hands and instantly surging into Sumi's body. The small patch of night sky surrounding Sumi was illuminated by the starlight and specks of light, as if the scene of Sumi's first dragon bloodline evolution had reappeared, only without the same grandeur, and weakened by countless times. PS. Second update is here. Chapter 137 Evolution Recipe, Dream Blood. Just when Liu Ming thought that the dragon bloodline transformation, even if it didn't completely elevate Sumi's energy level, would at least have some effect, the starlight that had been swarming into Sumi's body like a moth to a flame suddenly vanished, like the air, ablaze with mysterious energy, fading to a halt. Emerging from that strange state, Sumi stretched with immense comfort. Meow. It tilted its head and called out to Liu Ming, as if asking, "Master, why aren't you continuing?" Liu Ming frowned and continued to activate his bloodline transformation ability, but the starlight didn't reappear. Seeing this, he too was puzzled. Then, using his sixth dimensional perception, he noticed that the chaotic energy that used to be everywhere in the air was now so scarce it was barely perceptible. Based on the starlight, he wondered, could this talent require energy? Were those mysterious starlights formed by transforming the scarce energy floating in the air? Just as he was at a loss for words, his insight suddenly revealed information about this talent. Upon class advancement, the usefulness and effects of all abilities, talents, and specialties are not immediately known. They are triggered randomly as they are used. Liu Ming was surprised to learn that he hadn't triggered the Dragon Bloodline Transition talent until today. Dragon Bloodline Transition, a crucial talent for dragon breeders raising dragon pets. By analyzing the dragon's bloodline evolutionary food profile, a dragon breeder can select the optimal food for its evolution. They can then refine the food into dragon evolution blood, matching that dragon's bloodline transition chain. The Dragon Bloodline Transition Chain. Bottom level dragon creatures, bottom level low level dragon creatures, middle level intermediate dragon creatures, top level advanced dragon creatures, top level lower dragon creatures, middle dragon creatures, and upper dragon creatures. Purple Shadow Flame Tail Cat, a bottom level dragon creature with the attributes of darkness, shadow, fire, and beast. Evolutionary food spectrum. High strength muscle fibers of high explosive creatures, fire attributed parts of flame type creatures, parts of shadow type creatures with corresponding attributes, creatures of dragon bloodline, special plants of flame, shadow, and arc attributes, dragon blood plants. With the appearance of this talent information, Liu Ming's understanding of his profession seemed to have opened a whole new door. A new perspective on the evolution of dragon pets opened up to him. The true meaning of the dragon breeder profession, the name dragon breeder, finally revealed the tip of the iceberg. But what kind of food does Sumi need? As his gaze shifted to the flying beast Sumi had just hunted, a new insight naturally occurred to his mind. Dark attributed flying beasts, the main high strength muscle fibers are located at the base of the dorsal wings, and the dark attributed part is the heart. Both parts meet the dragon pet evolutionary food spectrum. This information was like having the entire evolutionary food spectrum engraved in his mind. As long as he knew the relevant creature's information, he could determine for himself whether it was suitable for Sumi's evolutionary food. Liu Ming strode forward, picked up the absolute blade, and with 2 swipes, he severed the wings of the F-rank apex flying beast, then dissected its entire bloody heart. Immediately stabbing his absolute blade into the ground, Liu Ming began his first extraction and transformation of the dragon evolution blood, targeting 2 parts of the evolved beast. Bits of multicolored starlight flew out from the creature's heart and wings, converging towards Liu Ming's hands, gradually enveloping them like a ball of light. After a few dozen breaths, the 2 parts of the monster became noticeably duller and more concave, and a chill spread over Liu Ming's palms, as if he were holding a pool of clear water. But the starlight continued to fly, and Liu Ming couldn't stop, so he could only hold the coolness in his palms. After several minutes, the evolved creature's heart and wings vanished like a sacrifice on an altar, leaving not even a single bone. In the end, all that remained in Liu Ming's hands was a handful of liquid, emitting a dreamy multicolored glow like a star. The liquid was already overflowing his palms, but he relied solely on his mental power to keep it aloft, otherwise it would have spilled to the ground. When the refining and transformation were complete, Liu Ming completely released his hands. A ball of magical liquid, the size of 2 fists, quietly hovered in mid-air. Sumi, who had been curiously watching her master, now gazed at the ball of evolution blood with a look of longing, a scene reminiscent of the time he'd seen the velociraptor's Angsin. "Eat it," Liu Ming commanded Sumi, after taking a look at the fruits of his labor. Sumi leaped forward and devoured the evolution blood. As soon as the blood entered her stomach, her entire body flashed with a dreamlike iridescent light. After the dreamlike light faded, Liu Ming could clearly feel the scales on her torso becoming more translucent, as if they had become even stronger. The temperature of her purple, blazing dragon tail also rose slightly, and the energy fluctuations and aura within her body intensified. Clearly, she was one step closer to officially reaching C rank. After consuming the evolution blood, Sumi immediately nuzzled towards Liu Ming with an affectionate expression, meowing repeatedly, signaling more, much to Liu Ming's amusement. A flicker of regret flashed through Liu Ming's mind. If he had discovered the usefulness and effectiveness of this talent sooner, perhaps Sumi and Jizuran would have already evolved to C level. But then he thought again, when he was still weak, every monster he hunted was used as a sacrifice. There wasn't any left to feed his dragon pets. For a long time, their diet consisted of ordinary meats like pork, beef, and mutton, still fresh from supermarkets and butcher shops. Go on, Sumi, next prey. Liu Ming waved his hand, inviting Sumi to lead the hunt. A few minutes later, on a street, an enormous ball-like creature vomited blood and fell under Sumi's massive claws. But not far away, Liu Ming shook his head, muttering with slight disappointment, defensive creatures don't fit Sumi's evolutionary food profile. Just as he was about to put away the nearly D-level monster as a sacrifice, he caught a glimpse of the giant cats nearby, and an idea struck him. This monster could also be used to refine evolutionary blood. While it wasn't suitable for Sumi, it could be used by the giant cats. It was unclear whether the dragon evolutionary blood would also have an evolutionary effect on Sumi's giant cat minions. If it did, wouldn't it be possible to quickly build a monster army several times more powerful than the current one? After all, most of Sumi's giant cat minions were currently only F-level evolutionary creatures, with only a dozen or so E-level evolutionary beasts. It wasn't that Wuling City lacked D-level cat evolutionary creatures, but those D-level evolutionary creatures simply wouldn't choose to submit to a similarly D-level Sumi. Liu Ming quickly approached the monster, nearly 2 meters tall, leaving just lying there, and extended his hands to begin the refinement and transformation. However, this time, it took nearly twice as long as the previous F-level peak flying beast evolutionary blood. It took a full 10 minutes to refine the multi-ton monster's evolutionary blood, producing a ball of evolutionary blood the size of a human head. Chapter 138, Dragon's Power Tamed, Scarface Leader. Liu Ming casually selected a giant orange cat from Sumi's staff, one with a long scar running down the back of its head. When Liu Ming instructed the cat, a size larger than a full-grown Siberian tiger, to consume the blood of evolution, it expressed resistance and suspicion, seemingly distrusting Liu Ming, a human. Sumi whipped her tail like a steel whip, ready to teach her a lesson for disrespecting her master, but Liu Ming waved her hand to stop. This time, Liu Ming wanted to test his ability as a dragon keeper, to compel the evolved creature before him. He didn't rely on Sumi's control over his subordinates, as he had previously done, even though he knew the unruly cat would obey Sumi's orders. Ever since Sumi had saved it from near death at the hands of Nikang Song, it had become Sumi's most loyal servant. It eagerly followed Sumi wherever she went. Even at night, when Sumi lay soundly asleep in his arms, the giant orange cat would stand by like a guard, motionless all night. Liu Ming tried to communicate, "This is good for you. It'll help you evolve. Swallow it." The giant cat tilted its head and spun its butt, then walked off to the side, flicking its tail at Liu Ming's face. Although it didn't touch him, it was clearly showing off, seemingly ignoring him completely. Are my amicable, communicative, and telepathic abilities all fake? Liu Ming grumbled, seeing his first attempt in vain, met with disdain and contempt from an evolved beast. However, if he knew the hideous scars on the giant cat's face were from a half-grown pet before the catastrophe, inflicted by a perverted, animal-abusing human, he might have felt more at ease. Ever since the giant cat unexpectedly evolved during the catastrophe, in the days leading up to Liu Ming's encounter, every survivor it encountered had perished at its claws and fangs, including the pervert who had been abusing it during the catastrophe. In short, this was a strange cat with a deep hatred for humans. Although his initial attempt failed, Liu Ming remained undaunted. He later suffered numerous setbacks trying to tame his pets. He quickly gave chase, insisting, "Why are you leaving? Let's talk." The orange cat turned and ignored him. Liu Ming approached again. "I mean you no harm." The orange cat impatiently swung its arm-thick tail at Liu Ming. Liu Ming dodged and continued, "If you don't trust me, do you also trust Sumi? Isn't he your boss?" "I'm his boss." The orange cat simply dropped to the ground and closed its eyes, not even looking at him. After a long moment, he stared at the giant orange cat before him, which refused to open its eyes. Liu Ming roared with a look of pain on his face. "If soft tactics don't work, use force." Taming with dragon might. With his roar, a vast and majestic consciousness suddenly emerged, and a wave of mental pressure instantly overtook the giant cat. Taming with dragon might. The dragon keeper mobilizes the dragon power deep within their bloodline, harnessing the spiritual energy of their pet dragon to create dragon might. This pressure exerts upon the target creature, forcing it to tame. The strength of the dragon might depends on the keeper's dragon vein power and soul strength, as well as the number and strength of their pet dragons. Note that creatures tamed with dragon might are tamed by force, and are highly likely to rebel after the dragon might fades. Use with caution. Just as Liu Ming finished reading the ability information, a meow rang out. The giant cat, reaching the pinnacle of E-level power, had been crushed to the ground by the dragon might, its head pinned to the ground by an invisible force, now lying motionless. "Swallow it." Liu Ming handed over the evolved hematosis and gave the order. The giant cat stubbornly ignored him, but then he forcibly pried its mouth open with his bare hands and forced the blood of evolution into it. Under the immense pressure of Longwen's taming, the giant cat finally gave up resistance and obediently swallowed the blood of evolution. The orange cat's reaction to swallowing the blood of evolution was far more dramatic than Sumi's mere dream-like flash of light. Amidst the same rainbow-colored light, the orange-red fur on the back of its head, cheeks, belly, back, legs, and tail rapidly fell away. In its place, gray-black crystalline scales grew, a color somewhat similar to the mutants. The orange cat's size also rapidly expanded, its massive muscles swelling like air, its size increasing with every passing minute. When the light finally faded, the beast, now the size of a Siberian tiger and slender and powerful, had grown to resemble a giant bear on all fours. Even on all fours, it towered over Liu Ming by two heads, standing over 2 meters tall. Its size was even several times larger than Sumi's own. "Meow." Sumi cried doubtfully, as if unsure if the giant before her was still her own subordinate. Meanwhile, Liu Ming's insight revealed that the orange giant cat's biological name had changed from evolved cat to evolved giant cat, Dragon. Its energy level had also evolved from peak E class to early D class. Though its appearance had changed drastically, and its strength had greatly increased, the giant cat, still bearing the scar on its face, immediately approached Sumi after its evolution. Its body, several times larger than a polar bear's, shook the ground with every step it took. Upon reaching Sumi, this behemoth, over 2 meters tall and barely smaller than Jizarong, bent its limbs and crawled on the ground, allowing its massive head to gaze up at the now shorter Sumi, a gesture of submission. Sumi waved a large paw, signaling her acceptance of its submission, and telling it to stand up and leave. Seeing this, the giant beast stood up, gave Liu Ming a deep look, and then walked towards its companions. This time, the giant cats, who had previously been of similar or even lower energy levels, all lowered their heads in awe, not daring to look directly at it. A D-rank leader, besides Sumi, had emerged from the cat colony, and this leader was Sumi's loyal subordinate. Liu Ming looked at the successfully evolved orange giant cat with a look of satisfaction and said, "How do you feel?" Although its evolution appeared to be successful, Liu Ming still worried about the consequences of this unconventional evolution. After all, this evolutionary blood seemed to be exclusive to dragon creatures. The orange giant cat finally paid attention to Liu Ming this time. After Liu Ming used his telepathic ability to inquire, a cold voice echoed in his mind, "Human, I'm fine. I'm filled with power, and can shatter your strength." Was this the orange cat's voice? Liu Ming was surprised. He hadn't expected this creature to finally pay attention to him. Liu Ming automatically ignored its threat to tear him apart. Not all of his pets and later generations were as obedient as Sumi and Jizarong. Nearly every one of them had expressed similar desires to tear him apart. Compared to its strength, these were nothing. As long as it was under his control, it was enough. A D-level evolved creature was already worthy of his attention. At this point, it was considered the 5th strongest fighting force in the shelter, after himself, Sumi, Zilirong, and Gong Weizin. Strike while the iron is hot. Liu Ming continued, since you've successfully evolved, how about I give you a name? Without waiting for the orange cat's consent, Liu Ming continued without hesitation. Let's call you Scarface. Whatever you say, human. The still icy voice echoed in Liu Ming's heart, but it meant that the orange cat had agreed to his chosen name. Very good, Sumi, Scarface. Let's continue hunting. Liu Ming was extremely high-spirited at this time. He seemed to be able to imagine himself leading hundreds of high-level dragon monsters under his command to directly sweep through the major secret realms of Wuling, going back and forth freely, and defeating the 16 peaks, 54 absolutes, and 63 dry fortresses. Chapter 139 Monster Shepherd, Talent Limit. Tier. Scarlet fingers instantly slashed through the pitch black night, leaving a trail of blood. A two-armed snake demon, pierced by Zilirong's rock spear and earth spike, had its sword-grabbing arm ripped apart by Liu Ming's scollard hand. Hiss. A strange shrill cry echoed. Liu Ming, incredibly familiar with these creatures, instantly recognized the scream of an abyssal demon. Then, Liu Ming wielded his absolute blade, its blade also imbued with a deadly crimson destructive light, and slashed down at the snake demon. The blade sliced through the center of the D-rank peak demon's head, leaving a long red line that instantly tore it in two. For Earth-attributed demons, the primary high-strength muscle fibers are located in the snake's body, arms, chest, and shoulders. Earth-attributed parts like the heart and gallbladder fit the evolutionary food profile of the dragon pet Zuanio and dragon salamander. After Sumi and Scarface successfully evolved using the evolution blood, Liu Ming immediately returned to the shelter and brought out the still sleeping Zilirong. After all, Zilirong had reached the pinnacle of D rank before Sumi and was now nearing the edge of evolving to C rank. And this snake demon was the target Liu Ming had painstakingly searched for over an hour. Since the apocalypse had only been going on for a dozen days, naturally evolved or mutated D-rank creatures were still incredibly rare. Therefore, creatures above D-rank were not easy to find. Just look at Heijin, the Wild Legion's strongest evolver, a D-ranker. Yet, he led a caravan and brazenly and recklessly searched for supplies. If D-rank monsters were common, they wouldn't dare act so brazenly. Currently, the main D-rank monsters were still from otherworldly races. Those monster species all travel in packs, making lone D-rank monsters that could be easily killed without much effort even more difficult to find. Liu Ming was secretly delighted to find this snake demon, leading a group of demons, to besiege a small shelter in the middle of the night. All the D-rank monsters he had encountered before were led by C-rank or higher monsters, stationed near monster nests. While Liu Ming's current strength meant he could withstand the attacks of 2 or 3 C-rank monsters without much difficulty, he didn't dare underestimate these monster nests, which were apparently only inhabited by C-rank monsters. He still vividly remembered the experience of chasing Zilirong nearly a week ago, only to be hunted by a C-rank monster. So much time had passed, and who knew if B-rank or even A-rank monsters would suddenly emerge from those monster nests? Although the evolution of his 2 dragon pets was imminent, everything had to be done safely. This time, refining and transforming the snake demon's evolution blood took Liu Ming nearly 20 minutes. When Zilirong swallowed this blood, extracted from top-tier D-rank monsters, a rainbow of light shone from it for several minutes. Fortunately, Liu Ming had anticipated this and found a secluded, darkened area before allowing Zilirong to consume the evolution blood. Otherwise, this creature, like an extremely powerful searchlight flickering for several minutes, would surely attract countless mosquitoes and moths like a candle in the dark night. But these mosquitoes and moths were terrifying monsters. When Zilirong's light faded and his form reappeared, not only had the dark yellow scales on his body darkened, appearing even more sturdy, but he had also grown considerably larger. His pillar-like limbs stood upright, and with his head raised, he seemed almost as tall as a building. The most significant change was his tail. The scale-covered bony tail club at the end had grown from the size of an office chair to the size of half a desk. With a gentle swing, Liu Ming's tail club pounded a deep crater the size of a millstone in the ground. Liu Ming observed Liu Ming's new appearance and nodded in satisfaction. Thanks to the effects of this evolutionary blood, Liu Ming's energy level had surpassed the peak of D level, surpassing Sumi's and reaching the D level limit, closer to C level. He then turned and led his 2 dragon pets and hundreds of monsters, led by Scarface, out of the spacious factory building and into the thick night. Not long after he left, a figure quietly emerged from behind a sealed iron door in a corner of the factory, peering out. Someone among the survivors in the workshop behind her anxiously asked, "Sister Meng, what did you just see?" A man led a large group of monsters to kill the terrifying creatures that attacked us. The person who had leaned out to observe the situation answered without turning. The voice was a girl. "Liu Ming, are you sure you saw it clearly? A single person killed so many terrifying monsters, even Superman couldn't do that, right? You said he led a group of monsters? Is he a monster hunter or a Pokemon trainer? Are you kidding me?" Another voice behind her asked sarcastically, full of suspicion. The girl, seeing someone questioning her, immediately replied angrily, "What else? If the monsters hadn't been killed, do you think you, a worthless warrior, would still be standing here alive? You?" The voice cried in shock and anger, but with that retort, its voice abruptly stopped, like a drake being strangled. Liu Ming ignored him, watching Liu Ming's departure with a look of excitement on her face. She muttered to herself, "A man who herds monsters and controls their attacks is so strong. And most importantly, why does he look so much like Liu Ming? It's been ages since we last met at the orphanage." She was a recent graduate interning at the factory. Luckily, she hadn't turned into a monster during the disaster and had awakened a superpower. However, her ability was somewhat limited, the ability to see through objects, commonly known as X-ray vision. A more sleazy man might be overjoyed with this ability, but on a cute girl like her, it was a bit shocking. Her sole job these days was to act as a scout, observing any signs of monster activity outside for the nearly 100 survivors in the workshop, and assisting them in their search for food. Who knew that one person's chain would fall off today, slowing down the entire group and ultimately attracting these ferocious monsters? Everyone heard the banging on the door, expecting certain death. Fortunately, the terrifyingly powerful man suddenly appeared, saving hundreds of lives. "Hey, we are both users with special abilities, but why is mine such a meager ability like X-ray vision, while he possesses something so powerful as monster control?" The girl's resentment boiled over, ultimately radiating into circles, cursing someone who was currently searching for their next prey. On the rooftop of a building, a D-ranked, pinnacle hellhound, with a small lump next to its enormous, ferocious head, as if about to sprout a second, lay in a pool of blood, a hint of fatigue etched on Liu Ming's face. He had been hunting monsters since nightfall, and by now, daybreak was approaching. He had already slain no fewer than 10 D-rank monsters, not even counting E-rank monsters. After extracting the hellhound's evolution blood, he gestured to Sumi to swallow it. Sumi's initial excitement had faded, and she swallowed the blood with a hint of frustration. This was already the 6th serving of D-rank evolution blood that matched its dietary profile, but the colorful glow grew fainter each time. Under the influence of the evolution blood, Sumi was edging ever closer to sea level, having already reached the sea level limit, surpassing the pinnacle of sea level, but unable to break through. Liu faced the same dilemma, Liu Ming thought to himself. It seemed necessary to find a sea level monster for sacrifice, and refine evolution blood in order for Sumi and Liu to quickly break through this barrier to evolution. Furthermore, besides the orange cat Scarface, only 2 D-level evolutionary cats had been born. Because they were one white and one black, Liu Ming casually named them Sunny Sky and Dark Cloud. That night's frantic hunt for evolution blood had taught him a hard rule. Unless a higher level monster were used to refine evolution blood, these evolutionary cats could only reach the pinnacle or limit of their current energy level. As for Scarface, who had successfully evolved to D-level using peak E-level evolution blood, he was clearly an anomaly. PS. Today is the 3rd update. I still owe 2 more, so I'll do it next week. Just to let you know, my first 150 orders are a bit dismal, so I've been feeling down the last 2 days and haven't been posting much. Please give me some time to catch up. I'm going to have a good sleep today, and I hope to be back to writing next week. Chapter 140, The Power of the Giant Cat, Points System. At dawn, Liu Ming scooped up over 30 tons of high quality steel from the city's largest building materials market. Not familiar with steel, Liu Ming specifically selected high strength steel with the highest unit price. While searching the market, he encountered several waves of monsters, but they were quickly dispatched by the new giant cat leaders, Sunny and Dark Cloud. Sunny and Dark Cloud evolved from a white ragdoll and a grey-black exotic bobtail. Unlike Scarface, whose pre-catastrophe origins were completely unrecognizable, Sunny and Dark Cloud were easily distinguishable by their appearance. After evolving, Sunny retained the elegant slender figure of the ragdoll, commonly known as the fairy cat. His expressive eyes resembled a crystal clear sapphire. Even in peacetime, this appearance alone would have made him a perfect pet. Dark Cloud, with his adorable figure, seemingly enlarged countless times, clearly resembled an exotic bobtail of the same breed as Garfield. But now, it's a terrifying, fat cat so massive it could crush a van with its multi-ton blubber alone. While the two creatures, having evolved into sub-dragon giant cats through dragon blood, still appear unthreatening, their constantly dripping claws, razor-sharp fangs, and jade-like, crystal-like armor covering only vital areas, all demonstrate their offensive power. These beasts have reached D rank in both attack and defense. At this point, even a fully armed group of survivors, including those with evolved classes, would consider them undisputed bosses. Terrifying monsters capable of completely annihilating a medium-sized shelter of over 1,000 people. However, compared to Scarface, these two rising giant cats still seem a bit behind. Because Scarface, through the evolution of that evolutionary blood, had also gained two remarkable combat abilities, absolute defense and bloodthirsty ferocity. In absolute defense, Scarface's already incredibly strong muscles, several times larger than a polar bear, instantly increased in strength, reaching a near rock hardness. In bloodthirsty ferocity, Scarface's body expanded even further, ultimately reaching a size comparable to that of Jizirang. Furthermore, he could rear up on his hind legs to fight, standing nearly 2 stories tall, like a frenzied prehistoric giant bear, his strength instantly increasing by over 50%. During a night of hunting, Scarface, leveraging these two abilities, with the strength of an early stage D-level bear, effectively slew a mid D-level mutant bear. He himself had been severely injured in the ferocious hand-to-hand combat between the two behemoths. However, thanks to the combined healing powers of Cayman's Crown of Nature and the Light of Tranquility, he had recovered from his injuries and was able to climb to his feet again. Among the hundreds of giant cats in the cat colony, 1/3 are E-level evolved beasts, which is several times more than the original 1/10. However, after Liu Ming's test, it seems that the evolutionary blood cannot be preserved. If it is not swallowed in time within a few breaths, after being refined and transformed, the mysterious substance that helps evolution will quickly evaporate. This also cuts off Liu Ming's idea of going out to hunt powerful creatures, to extract the evolutionary blood, and then preserving it, and bringing it back to cultivate giant cats. This thing must be refined and swallowed on the spot. And if the monster corpse is brought back for refinement, after the monster dies, the mysterious evolutionary substance in the body will also slowly evaporate, and the extracted evolutionary blood will also be far less effective than the one extracted on the spot. It seems that, although this talent is strong enough, it also has many limitations. Liu Ming sighed as the sky brightened into daylight, leading the giant cats back to the train station. By this time, Liu Ming had already led the giant cats from the west to the east of the city in pursuit of the evolution blood. On their return journey, they encountered numerous monsters that had begun roaming in droves since daybreak. However, they were all swiftly routed by the piercing charge of the giant cat leader, each as massive as 3 armored vehicles. Upon returning to the train station, Liu Ming's first act wasn't to recover from a night of fatigue, but to gather everyone. Now that the wall of ashes had been completed, thousands of men would be left with nothing to do. Supporting thousands of idlers was a no-brainer for Liu Ming. It was simply impossible. He would maximize the potential of every available human resource. The points system was Liu Ming's idea for harnessing their potential. Every contribution would be converted into points, which could be exchanged for food, shelter, weapons, offerings, and even divine favor. Of course, without an ironclad oversight system, such a system would be a joke. And expecting survivors, whose inner order has collapsed in the apocalypse, to adhere to such a system and maintain fairness would be even more impossible. But Liu Ming decisively announced his new system after everyone, including himself, had gathered a total of 1,198 survivors. He had reason to act. Standing before thousands of people, he began his speech. The construction of the ash wall has concluded. Future maintenance and improvements are a matter of the future. We still face many challenges, the most crucial of which is team fairness. We currently have only 63 combat members, professionals, and specializations, while there are 1,135 ordinary people who need protection. With the completion of the ash wall, the vast majority of these ordinary people will likely be left with nothing to do. Combat members are far more powerful than ordinary people, but is it fair to expect 63 people to volunteer to protect thousands of people who no longer contribute to the shelter? Is it unfair? In the apocalypse, everyone must be busy. I want to tell you that any attempt to idle away the daylights is absolutely impossible here. You want safety and survival. That depends on whether you're qualified to achieve this goal. To ensure your protection and survival, I will establish the following system. You can call it a points system. Any contribution to our survivors' refuge can be exchanged for points. Through these points, you can earn daily sustenance and the powerful power that each of you desire, the kind only combatants possess. The points system will establish 4 roles. First, combat professionals, belonging to the first category, will receive a fixed daily tier of points. The specific rules for redeeming and earning points will be discussed and determined by everyone after I announce the points system. Simply follow my instructions. The first category, evolutionary professionals, including combat professionals and support professionals like Kei Junran and Gong Ruohan, will all be included in the first tier of the points system. Daily points will be awarded at the highest level, while mission and contribution points will be calculated separately. That's right. In addition to the daily points sent every day, there are also task points and contribution points. If you carry out the team's tasks, or make some kind of contribution, such as finding some precious materials and turning them in, it can be counted as contribution points. I will name the profession of evolutionary professionals as Category A according to the energy level and contribution of Category A professionals. They will be tentatively divided into 4 standards: low level, intermediate, high level and top level. Next is Category B profession. If any of you are engaged in medical work or scientific research such as physical chemistry and materials science before the end of the world and can prove that your skills are not just for show, you can go to Gong Weekson to sign up later. He will be responsible for the screening and judgment of Category B professionals. Category B professionals are also divided into 4 levels from low to top, and the treatment is based on evolutionary professionals, which is slightly lower than Category A. The third category is Category C profession. Among these professionals, some will have the opportunity to obtain the various mysterious powers that you have seen and desire to possess. Liu Ming paused, and molten lava suddenly erupted from his hand, its scalding heat causing everyone to gasp in surprise. The original purpose of this class is because the search teams serving as combatants are short on personnel, so we need to recruit strong and courageous ordinary people. Those who successfully join the search teams will automatically be assigned to the third category, Class C classes. These individuals will participate in the search team's various search missions and fight on the front lines against monsters. Seeing the crowd, who had been excited and eager to try out the chance to gain mysterious powers, suddenly frowned upon hearing that they would also be out searching for supplies and even fighting. Liu Ming continued, but don't worry about dying. If you choose to become a Class C combat member, you will receive basic combat training. Those who perform well will even receive the opportunity to evolve directly. Even if you don't, you may still be equipped with various equipment. Only after you have become capable of handling ordinary monsters will you be allowed to join the search team. You won't be letting your heads fall directly into the monsters' mouths. The selection for Class C occupations will be handed over to Marjan and the captains of each search team. Anyone who is interested in joining the search team and has the courage to face monsters can voluntarily sign up for the selection. Although I don't know how many people will eventually participate in the Class C occupation selection, I still want to tell you, so that you know that, although this shelter is calm on the surface now, and no one has died from monster attacks since you came here. However, this is all because the Class A professionals protected your safety during the monster attacks. If one day they cannot protect you in time, or even face monsters that even they cannot resist, and can only flee for their lives when disaster strikes, think of your fate. Now is your chance and time to stand up and shoulder your own destiny. I believe that many of you still have relatives whose lives are uncertain. But if you don't dare to stand up, then even if you can survive in this shelter, you will never be able to find your relatives again. Only by gaining the power of what you consider to be transcendence are you worthy of stepping out of the gates of the Wall of Ashes and rescuing your loved ones. Daily points for Class C professions will be distributed according to the third tier, divided into 4 tiers from low to high. Top Class C professionals will automatically be given the opportunity to evolve into transcendence. This is my promise. Daily points for Class C professionals will be distributed according to the third tier, from low to high. Finally, those who participate in this selection and join the search team and rank in the top 10 in overall performance during combat training will also receive the opportunity to advance to a new class, the power you will desire. Then there's the fourth category, Class D professions. This is the final category, who must perform various daily labors to earn points. This category does not receive daily points. Their daily food must be earned through a day's labor. Various labor tasks are distributed by Kinyu. Class D professionals must accept daily labor tasks to earn task points. Chapter 141, Balance of Justice. Everyone squat down. After Liu Ming finished explaining the division of responsibilities among the 4 occupations, A, B, C, and D, as well as the tiered standards for points distribution, and then said to the crowd, if you have any suggestions, raise them now, or you'll miss out. Everyone excitedly began to speak. Even with Liu Ming's exceptional hearing, it was difficult to discern what was being said amid the cacophony. Watching everyone excitedly rushing to offer suggestions, Liu Ming felt overwhelmed and shouted, stop. Speak one by one. All voices abruptly stopped, and he casually pointed at someone who raised their right hand to offer a suggestion, signaling him to speak. This person wasn't a professional, but Liu Ming had a deep impression of him. He was the man Liu Ming had encountered yesterday morning, laying bricks alone, while building the stone fortress tower. If I remember correctly, his name is Wang Sucheng, Liu Ming thought to himself. Wang Sucheng watched Liu Ming point in his direction and immediately took a few steps forward, asking, boss, who's responsible for tallying the points? How can we ensure fairness? It's not a simple matter. I have my own plans. I originally wanted to announce them after you've submitted your suggestions, but since you've asked, I'll be upfront. Liu Ming then conjured a golden scale-like object from his arms. This was a supplementary divine item he had stored in his magical album, the Scales of Justice. The Scales of Justice, a rare item, a magical scale with equal weights on each side. Whether the weight is an object, a life, an emotion, fate, pain, joy, or anything else, there's an equal weight to maintain the balance. This is a rare item, a special divine item whose power may not be particularly useful, but is nonetheless miraculous. The Scales of Justice is one such item, and it has become highly sought after in later generations. This is an incredibly magical scale. Simply set a standard, and like an absolutely impartial super intelligent brain, it calculates the equivalent value of any item. Therefore, in the future, anyone using the Scale of Justice in transactions will be safe from fraud and deception. Many large chambers of commerce, seeking to prove their absolute fairness and attract customers, collect a Scale of Justice as their treasure. Please establish the names of weights and measures. As Liu Ming channeled his spiritual power into the Scale of Justice, a dispassionate voice echoed within him. He thought to himself, this must be the Scale of Justice's spirit. Every guild of commerce in the future will have a scale of justice to oversee and arbitrate, assisting the makers of the rules and regulations. Points, Liu Ming said, his mind racing. Confirmed. Points will be used as the measurement system for the just scale. Please establish the rules. Points system. Confirmed. Points will be used as the rules system for the just scale. Please establish. Nearly 10 minutes passed before Liu Ming finally transmitted his design for the 4 professions and the points system, one by one, into the just scale. The just scales of later guilds could communicate information to thousands or even tens of thousands of people in a fraction of a second. When the mental transmission was complete, a lifelike sculpture resembling Liu Ming could be vaguely seen on the smooth crossbar of the scale. This was also one of the characteristics of the just scale. It would only accept one standard setter, and that person's image would appear on the scale. After establishing the standards, the standard setter only had the right to modify them, but could not affect the equitable balance of the scale. Above the palm-sized scale tray hovered a dense mass of tiny silver weights, each the size of a sesame seed. If it weren't for Liu Ming's exceptional eyesight, he'd probably need a magnifying glass to discern these tiny silver dots as individual weights. These were the components of the justice scale, the justice weights. Liu Ming reached out his hand toward the floating weights, and one instantly vanished from the justice scale, swiftly flying towards him like a streak of silver light. Then, in the blink of an eye, it flew into his palm, as if fused with flesh and blood. A voice rang out, "Got justice weight number 1. The rules he had just established appeared before him like a screen of light, displaying the division's 4 classes from the 1st to the 4th. From now on, everyone who joined his newly established points system would receive a corresponding, exclusive justice weight. To the left of the tray, a golden figure resembling Liu Ming appeared, like a miniature Liu Ming shrunk countless times. Everyone watched in confusion as Liu Ming, instead of directly answering the question, produced a gleaming golden scale. Liu Ming, sensing their confusion, said, "Everyone, touch the weight on this scale." Gong Ruohan was the first to rush forward, curiously touching the floating weight. A silver weight, identical to the previous one, transformed into a stream of silver light and merged into Gong Ruohan's palm. Gong Ruohan has obtained justice weight number 2. Then, one by one, everyone stepped forward, each merging a justice weight. Finally, when thousands of people had received a justice weight, thousands of tiny golden figures appeared on the tray to the left of the figure. Everyone stared at their palms in wonder, as if wondering how the light had gotten there. Some had already summoned the light curtain of the justice scales rules, and were perusing the rules laid out by Liu Ming with curiosity. Liu Ming began, "Now, it's time to tell you what it does. In the name of justice, I establish the rules and standards for the scales. 1 kilogram of rice, 10 weights." With that, Liu Ming retrieved a small bag of rice, weighing approximately 10 kilograms, from the magical photo. He slowly brought it close to the scale in his hand and chanted, "In the name of justice, measure." As soon as he finished speaking, a flash of silver light appeared, and all the information about the rice was detected and recorded by the justice scale. 7.4 kilograms of rice. Weight number 1 earned 74 points. The spirit of justice on the justice scale rang out, its emotionless voice. The bag of rice in his hand was marked with a golden scale mark, invisible to anyone except him. This signified that it had already been recorded by the justice scale, preventing any duplication. In the name of justice, I establish the rules and standards for the scales. Squat, 1 point. As he finished speaking, a message popped up on the screen. Squat once and earn 1 point. Everyone, squat once. Upon hearing his command, everyone immediately squatted. Some, sensitive to opportunity, even began squatting frantically, their points instantly increasing by 3 or 4 points. In the name of justice, the rules are abolished. Seeing the joy on the faces of those who succeeded, each preparing to squat frantically, Liu Ming instantly cancelled the task of squatting once to earn 1 point. Those who were still squatting frantically stopped after a while, realizing their points remained unchanged. Summon your justice weights, Liu Ming said, summoning his small silver weight and displaying it to the crowd. From now on, everyone must use the points in these weights to redeem daily food and various supplies, including me. Each weight contains your current points. As long as you have enough points, you can redeem anything, Liu Ming said solemnly. At first glance, this system seemed a bit unfair to him. After all, he had previously had the final say in everything about the shelter, but now he would be subject to the points system. But in reality, it was extremely beneficial to Liu Ming. Don't forget, he provided all the food for the entire shelter. He had also stored most of the shelter's supplies in his magical photo. This meant he alone controlled over 90% of the shelter's rooms. Starting today, everyone who wanted to eat had to exchange points for food. Most of these points would go back to him, since he was the one providing the food and supplies they needed. If the shelter were a company, he alone would own over 90% of the company. Everyone's faces lit up with excitement upon hearing this. While this rule would replace the current model of shared living and dining, it would undoubtedly represent a significant opportunity for those who were dissatisfied with the status quo and still held out hope for the future. Everyone felt that through their own hard work, if they accumulated enough points, they too could become professionals. Liu Ming then asked, "Does anyone still object to the fairness of the points system?" The crowd fell silent, but almost everyone's expression expressed hope. Only Wang Suqing, who had just raised the issue of fairness in the system, continued to ask, "Boss, how many points are needed to become a transcendent?" Liu Ming was taken aback by the sudden question. After a few seconds of consideration, he slowly said, "The opportunity for a job advancement is tentatively set at 30,000 points." To his surprise, upon hearing this seemingly enormous number, the crowd erupted in cheers, especially the ordinary survivors. They had just heard Liu Ming set the value of 1 kilogram of rice at 10 points. 30,000 points meant 3,000 kilograms of rice, and everyone felt that becoming a transcendent was within reach. Liu Ming, of course, guessed their thoughts, but he simply shook his head, thinking, "You'll soon learn how difficult it is to earn 30,000 points. Especially for ordinary people, gathering 3 tons of food in the apocalypse is simply unrealistic." However, there were some things he didn't say directly to dampen his men's enthusiasm. He continued, "Mahjun, Gong Weixin, Gong Ruohan, Kejunren, and all the evolved classes and awakened personas, please work together to come up with a standard. I'll finalize the rules and standards and enter them into the fair scales." He considered the time it would take to meticulously establish standards, both large and small. For example, how many points would be exchanged for a pound of rice or a bag of biscuits? How many daily points would be awarded for classes ABC, and what would be the standard for awarding contribution points? Or how many contribution points would be awarded for finding a steamed bun or a liter of fuel? All of this needed to be established from scratch. Liu Ming was now exhausted and had no energy left to participate in this tedious task. He simply needed his subordinates to produce the final results he desired, and he would then make adjustments to the final results. Chapter 142 Wooden House Canteen. At noon, under the blazing sun, a rectangular wooden hut, over 3 meters tall, and covering several hundred square meters, had been erected in the treehouse plaza. Outside, the heat waves were almost visible. The asphalt was so hot you could fry an egg. Entering the hut felt like stepping from a scorching summer into a cool autumn day. It was like stepping into a room with the air conditioner set to its lowest setting. But since the catastrophe, when the power plants completely shut down, leaving the entire city without electricity, air conditioning had become a thing of the past. Yet, inside the hut, gusts of cool air washed over us. The source of this coolness was clearly 4 man-high ice crystals. These crystals were the creations of the ice mage Han Piaxu. While their offensive power wasn't significant, they were a useful tool for cooling the air. Aside from the 4 ice crystals in the 4 corners, the hut was furnished like a cafeteria, though the tables and chairs were all made of wood. To the inside, a kitchen and a compartment resembling a food window were located. The compartments were enclosed in iron sheets to prevent open flames from cooking, which could potentially ignite fires in wooden structures. This log cabin canteen was the fruit of a single morning's labor by K Mengwen and Gong Ruohan after the point system was established. K Mengwen first used his plant stimulating abilities to transform still living branches into trees growing side by side. Once these trees reached the same height, Mahjun led his men to cut off their roots and bury the solid wood in the ground to form the 4 walls of the log cabin canteen. The roof of the cabin was constructed from steel collected by Liu Ming, stretched and extended into thin iron sheets by Gong Ruohan's skilled craftsmanship. So, in just one morning, a simple log cabin was built. In front of a window with a small wooden sign advertising magical cuisine, Gong Ruohan rubbed her belly, smacked her lips, and with a smile on her face, narrowed her eyes. She coquettishly said to Kei Junren, who was dressed as a cook, "Sister Junren, give me another serving of sweet and sour beef tenderloin." 200 points, Ruohan, this is your third serving, right? Kei Junren handed her a large, fragrant roasted tenderloin, glancing at her, somewhat speechless. I wonder where this little girl gets such a big appetite. This dish is quite substantial. The ingredient is an E-rank evolved bull hunted by the search team that morning. Because its entire body was engulfed in flames and capable of controlling flame attacks, it was nicknamed the Fire Bull. Later, she transformed it into several dishes, including sweet and sour beef tenderloin, braised beef chunks, and steak. Each dish not only weighed at least a pound, but her cooking also stimulated the primordial energy within the evolved creature's flesh, imbuing it with magical energy that enhanced its physical fitness. Gong Ruohan took the dish, blinked, and smiled happily. Here, 200 points. He tossed the silver weight to Kei Junren, who took it and stroked it across his palm. The voice of the spirit of justice echoed, "Gong Ruohan, the owner of justice weight number 2, redeem this for a serving of sweet and sour beef tenderloin. 200 points will be deducted." Kei Junren, the justice. When Kei Junren returned justice weight number 2 to Gong Ruohan, its points had dropped by 200. 200 points earned. At that moment, a sudden message flashed through Liu Ming's mind. Because Liu Ming currently provided most of the food, all the points earned from the cafeteria's food were now being allocated to him by the justice scale. Liu Ming sat in the center of the wooden cafeteria, grappling with a large plate of fried beef tenderloin, likely weighing 2 or 3 kilograms. After receiving this message, he turned to look at Gong Ruohan, who was approaching cheerfully with a large plate. He shook his head and smiled. Such a big eater, but Kei Junren's cooking skills are truly astonishing. After she transitioned to a magical chef, the justice scales are indeed effective. No wonder they've been so sought after by guilds of commerce and all evolvers in later generations. After a morning of discussion, everyone finally finalized the outlines of the points system. From the smallest details like how many points are exchanged for a pound of rice to the most general details like how many points are exchanged for divine favor items and even divine favors for a class change. Everything had been roughly worked out. As for the weights Gong Ruohan had just placed on the scale tray, they were also a manifestation of the rules of the justice scales. While the scale wasn't actually a physical object, it was similar in that it served as a manifestation of the rules of the justice scales. Anyone who joined the justice scales system would receive justice points based on their contributions. Today's lunch marked the first implementation of the points system. Low-level Class A professionals receive 500 points daily, while mid-level professionals receive 1000 points, high-level professionals receive 2000 points, and the top-tier professionals receive 5000 points. As a high-level Class A professional, Gong Ruohan currently has a staggering 2000 points. That's more than enough for 3 servings of beef tenderloin. Even 7 or 8 would be more than enough. As for Class B professionals, the final selection hadn't yet been completed, so Liu Ming granted 10 points in advance to the thousands of ordinary people, excluding the 63 Class A professionals. These points were directly materialized through the rules of the justice scales. With a single thought, the manifested justice scales appeared in their hands. Of course, these points must be repaid. According to the points system, 10 points can be exchanged for a kilogram of rice, 10 steamed buns, 2 loaves of bread, and other supplies. However, according to the cafeteria's standards, that's only enough for a standard meal. A standard meal consists of a bowl of rice, a dish of pickles, and a bowl of soup. After comparing the options, most people opted to exchange for a few steamed buns or a loaf of bread, nibbling on them in a corner of the cafeteria. Because they each only had 10 points, a standard meal would leave them hungry that night. Furthermore, these points were granted in advance, and Liu Ming had explicitly stated that they had to be repaid through mission points. Who knew they wouldn't have to pay back the mission points earned today after a busy day? Watching the Class A professionals devouring feasts of fish and meat, and even magical dishes rumored to improve physical fitness, the people munching on bread and steamed buns were filled with resentment. Of course, Liu Ming could have set the standard lower, perhaps 1 point per standard meal, so that everyone could afford it and enjoy the meal. But Liu Ming would never do that. Instead, he deliberately set the standard high, even building a large dining hall capable of accommodating thousands of people at once. The goal was to allow everyone to dine together, allowing them to compare themselves through food. Desire is the driving force behind human progress. Humans once dreamed of conquering the oceans like great fish, ships sailing the seas with the wind and waves. Humans once dreamed of flying, airplanes soaring into the sky. Humans once dreamed of reaching the moon, spaceships ascending into space. Without the drive of desire, 9 out of 10 of these thousands of ordinary people would become nothing more than zombies and parasites. This was clearly not what Liu Ming wanted. What Liu Ming needed was for each of these thousands of people to possess a desire for a better life, to join him in fighting this apocalypse. The disparity in food was only one aspect of the disparity. Today, he planned to erect 20 to 30 tree houses in the square, housing the promising members of the B and C class professions. He believed that, when these survivors saw that their food and accommodations were so far inferior to their own, their mindset of living a life of idleness and waiting for death would undoubtedly change. Or perhaps they would become resentful and become completely useless. Liu Ming's view on such people has always been that starvation is their own fault. After all, every meal now requires points. Without contribution, there are no points, and without points, there is only starvation. Or perhaps, driven by desire, they are striving for change in their desired direction. For those who strive to change in this direction, and can contribute to his own development, Liu Ming has no problem helping them live a better life. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143, Kindness in the End of the World, Arming the Whole People. Liu Ming was somewhat surprised to see Gongrua had not returned to his table to eat. Instead, she walked straight past the table and approached a young woman sitting in the corner, nibbling on a steamed bun, while holding a little girl. Standing before the young woman and the little girl, whom Liu Ming had once met, Gongrua squatted down, looking level with the tiny 3-year-old girl, and gently said, "Here, have it." Then, she placed the sweet and sour beef tenderloin on the table. She wasn't exchanging it for herself, but for the mother and daughter. This gave Liu Ming a strange shock. No, we can't have it. It's too expensive." The young woman quickly shook her head and refused. She was taken aback by the price of 200 points per magic dish, enough for mother and daughter to get enough food to last them a month. "It's for you. Take it. If you don't eat it, the little girl will, right, my little cutie?" Gongrua said with a sly smile, caressing the face of the adorable porcelain doll-like girl. At that moment, the 3-year-old girl wrinkled her nose, her saliva drooling as she gazed at the roast beef tenderloin on her plate with a look of utter greed. At that moment, a figure in white approached. She placed a bowl of meat porridge on the table in front of the young woman and said expressionlessly, "Give me some too." Feed her with the porridge. Beef is hard for children to digest. Gongrua had just packed this bowl of porridge for lunch, and she had only eaten a small portion, handing the rest to the young woman. Seeing this, Liu Ming shook his head and said, "Human nature is kind." However, he didn't step forward to stop her. As long as the Class A professionals didn't all give away their points, disrupting the level balance he had established, he would let it go. Gone weeks in, at the top of the points system, one of only 3 top-tier Class A professionals earned 5,000 daily points alone, 10 times the daily points of a lower-level Class A professional, making her a truly wealthy individual. As for Liu Ming, the architect of the points system, he had set a standard for the sole super Class A professional. 30,000 daily points. If points were the new currency of this refuge, he would undoubtedly be the richest man. Liu Ming, I'm full. I'm going to get back to work. Liu Ming, have you got the steel? Gong Ruohan asked excitedly, watching the young woman gratefully accept his food. Liu Ming nodded and replied, well, there are dozens of tons of fine steel piled in front of the wall of ashes. That should be enough for you to build a gate. Also, command and control of the 4 clay golems is temporarily in your hands. Take them with you and get busy. Haha, I'll be off then, Liu Ming. Gong Ruohan laughed heartily and rushed out of the treehouse, ready to find the 4 giants he had long admired. Gong Weeksin, worried about her sister wandering around alone, turned and followed. Seeing Gong Weeksin put down her bowl and finished her words before heading out the door, seemingly unprepared for another lunch, Liu Ming couldn't help but wonder, not eating anymore? I'm full, Gong Weeksin said calmly. I think you're trying to save points to redeem for a class advancement divine favor. Liu Ming simply couldn't believe she could be full after just a few mouthfuls of porridge. Evolutionary professionals naturally eat more than ordinary people, as combat consumes high energy. Without adequate replenishment, the meager sugar reserves in their bodies will be depleted after a short battle. Although everyone is currently at the first level, the difference in appetite isn't noticeable yet. However, as their energy levels rise, evolutionary professionals' appetites will increase significantly, often 10 or even dozens of times greater than that of ordinary people. If he were to eat ordinary food in his later life, he would probably eat the equivalent of 10 ordinary people in one meal. Therefore, he generally ate foods made from evolutionary beasts and specially cultivated evolutionary crops. Examples include bloodfang rice, blue crystal beans, emerald wheat, spirit marrow fruit, black gold wheat, and other mutant plants that contain high amounts of high energy. Gong Weeksin blushed slightly as she said, well, my family is just ordinary people. As soon as she finished speaking, as if fearing Liu Ming's further questions, Gong Ruohan hurriedly strode out the door. Liu Ming was left with only a sigh. What a woman who never lies. After lunch, it was time to sort out the 4 categories of personnel. B, C, and D. 21 survivors had signed up for the B category screening, but how many of these individuals would ultimately qualify for the B category due to their abilities remained unknown. To Liu Ming's surprise, the number of volunteers for the C category combat class screening far exceeded his expectations. A full 600 people signed up. This meant that less than half of the D category candidates remained. Of course, a significant portion of the 600 C category applicants would also be eliminated. Gong Weeksin, which of those 21 people possess the research or medical skills I mentioned? Make sure to test them one by one. Those who don't meet the requirements will be eliminated, and none of them are just filling in the gaps. You will lead these 500 or so D-class professionals in assigning daily tasks. The tasks will be based on the standards I've explained to you, such as cleaning, jerking fresh meat, planting trees, washing clothes, and so on. Junran will take the women in the kitchen to assist Kinyu in this matter. Junran and the dozen or so women responsible for cooking and distributing food were all veterans who had followed Liu Ming the earliest. After all, a cook would never go hungry, and for ordinary people, just being able to avoid starvation in the apocalypse was a great blessing. The rest of you who signed up for C-class combat professions, follow me. According to his original plan, he only needed 13 search teams, each with 20 members, meaning he only needed a maximum of 300 C-class professionals. Now that number had doubled, he naturally had to select the more suitable individuals. However, Liu Ming didn't intend to allow those who weren't currently selected for the search teams to join the D-class logistics professions. Since they dared to step forward and participate in the combat personnel selection, Liu Ming would not let go of this potential fighting force. Those who didn't make the cut would be assigned to the shelter's garrison or the search reserve to be counted as a fighting force in a critical moment. In the apocalypse, no one capable of fighting monsters could be wasted. Liu Ming even hoped that each of his men would grow into a qualified survivor capable of taking on ordinary monsters on their own. Excellent. I'm glad you made the right choice. You'll be thankful for it in the future. Open it, Liu Ming instructed, watching the search team approaching nearby, dragging 2 large wooden boxes. Ma Jun raised his hand and flipped open the boxes, revealing a variety of weapons inside. Axes, 3-edged bayonets, boning knives, dogleg knives, machetes, watermelon knives, daggers, tang swords, and other sharp-edged cold weapons gleamed coldly before the 600 men. Chu Gang opened another box, revealing equipment such as explosion-proof and fencing uniforms. Wearing these equipment effectively protects against the bites of ordinary cannibal zombies. At the very least, the psychological fear of facing the frenzied cannibal zombies will be greatly reduced. Everyone beamed with joy upon seeing the weapons and equipment, feeling that, as the leader had said, joining the search team had been the right decision. These items, which could increase their chances of survival, were undoubtedly desirable in the apocalypse, and now seemed readily available. The 2 boxes contained sharp blades and military and police riot gear, but evolved classes were now almost all equipped with divine weapons, and looked down upon these ordinary cold weapons. These weapons and equipment were all collected by the search team and Liu Ming during their search for supplies over the past 10 days. The riot gear, collected by Liu Ming during his looting of the city's armed forces department, was nearly complete, with helmets, armor, and other components, numbering in the dozens. The fencing uniforms, also numbering in the dozens, were obtained from a martial arts gym warehouse during Marjan's team's clearing of monsters near the train station. These are the basic equipment for you, and there's far more. We have plenty, enough to equip everyone. But we can't give it to you yet. You can only receive the equipment after you complete basic combat training. Marjan randomly grouped them according to the roster into groups of 3. A few minutes later, the 3 stood in a row, forming group 201 in front of Liu Ming. Stand still, don't let your legs go weak. Let's begin training. Liu Ming's mouth twitched in a cruel arc. His full beard made him look even more ferocious, sending a chill down everyone's spine. Chapter 144 Combat Training, 8 Crazy Fist Styles. Let me see your physical fitness first. At the edge of the square, Liu Ming had Zhenrong use his earth-based abilities to clear a patch of fine sand for training. Looking at the 600 people before him, Liu Ming began their first training session. Under the scorching sun, high-spirited men and women, under his command, continuously completed various routine physical tests, sprints, push-ups, pull-ups. In the end, only fewer than 21 of the 600 persevered through his series of physical tests. Excellent. The 21 of you will immediately form groups into 7. Marjan will reshuffle their original groups. A moment later, the groupings were completed. Now, let's begin the real training. The training method I'm going to teach you is called the 8 Styles of Crazy Fist. Remember this name, because it will haunt your nightmares for a long time to come. Liu Ming said calmly, but the message between the lines sent a shiver through the crowd. The 8 Styles of Crazy Fist is how Duke Sun, the Crazy Fist's main patriarch, trains his Crazy Fist fighters. Duke Sun was a renowned boxing master in Tingshan County. During peacetime, he was known throughout Xiangnan province as the Tingshan Crazy Fist Master. After the apocalypse, his original Crazy Fist extreme burning training method became a cult favorite and widespread across Wuling. Many martial arts schools incorporated this training method, and many benefited greatly from it. However, the 8 Crazy Fist styles only worked for ordinary people, rapidly pushing them close to their human limits, reaching the theoretical pinnacle the level Marjan had reached before the apocalypse. At the start of the apocalypse, Liu Ming successfully advanced his class, surpassing all human limits in all aspects of his physical abilities. This training method was ineffective against him, and he never had the opportunity to use it. However, in later life, it took him a full year to achieve the divine grace of a class advancement. During the first year of the apocalypse, he ventured with the search team, relying on the agility honed by the now popular 8 Crazy Fist styles. As a beneficiary of the 8 Crazy Fist styles, he knew it was the perfect training method for these newbies. These people were fortunate enough to pay a considerable apprenticeship fee to a martial arts gym owner in order to learn this training method. The core of this training method is frantic training combined with crazy boxing nourishing meals. Otherwise, frantic training alone will inevitably lead to exhaustion. Its essence is to use various extreme and rapid methods to enhance strength, resistance to blows, speed, reaction speed, agility, and other comprehensive abilities in a very short period of time. Ultimately, ordinary people are trained to become warriors approaching human limits. The crazy boxing nourishing meals are made from 13 kinds of Chinese herbs and the blood of evolved beasts. Their primary function is to repair muscle damage caused by the intensifying training and to slightly strengthen the body and replenish ki and blood depletion. Of course, this nourishing meal is far inferior to the physical enhancement effects of Cajunran's magical cuisine. However, Liu Ming did not intend to have his chief chef prepare meals for the 600 people. Instead, he prepared to simmer a few large pots of nourishing meals for everyone. He had memorized the recipes. Preparing nourishing meals was actually quite simple, not much different from boiling traditional Chinese medicine. The only difficulty lay in obtaining the ingredients, 13 herbs and the blood of evolved beasts, imbued with natural primordial energy. Besides the 13 herbs, he also supplemented these meals with the blood of F-rank evolved beasts. This was far superior to his own future. Back then, he couldn't even be considered an F-rank professional, and couldn't afford to use F-rank beast blood to prepare his meals. He could only use the blood of ordinary, barely evolved beasts. This nourishing meal wasn't very effective, and during the first years of the apocalypse, the 8 crazy fists were still in their infancy and imperfect. As a result, it took him nearly 6 months to reach near human limits and peak physical fitness, and he sustained numerous hidden injuries. But what he was teaching these guys now was definitely the 8 crazy fists, refined and improved by countless ancient martial arts masters 10 years after the apocalypse, nearing perfection. Combined with his own nourishing meals, they could reach their human limits in just 2 months, and those with more advanced aptitude could even reach it in as little as a month. 21 of you, step out and do as I tell you. The first of the 8 crazy fist styles, extreme hard and soft flow. With that, Liu Ming performed an incredibly bizarre move before everyone's eyes, a movement so contorted it was practically beyond human control. Like a fish leaping from a frying pan, Liu Ming used his arms and legs to bend into a near circular arc, leaping high into the air, before landing straight down. After landing, he stood like a golden rooster. Then, as if his feet were firmly rooted to the ground, he held the iron bridge position. This move is designed to train your reaction speed and agility. The leap is soft, the landing is hard. Practicing this together makes the extreme hard and soft flow. Liu Ming repeated the move 3 or 4 times, before pausing and motioning for everyone to follow him. The sound of plops echoed continuously as all 21 of Liu Ming's chosen individuals successfully leaped, though each leap was short and each struggled to land smoothly. Each and every one of them landed in a hectic manner, their heads tumbling to the ground like a scallion on dry land, their butts facing the sky like a wild goose falling from the sand. Their various comical poses drew laughter from the onlookers. Hehe, enough laughing. Then let's do it together. Liu Ming shouted at the crowd with a sinister smile. Everyone shuddered in fear and began to jump around as well. This move might not seem particularly remarkable at first glance, but with a correct form, continuous practice will significantly improve one's agility and jumping ability, especially one's ability to evade attacks. This is because the extreme Goju Ryu's hard flow style shares similarities with the ancient martial art Iron Bridge, both of which are uniquely skilled in evading attacks. The soft flow style, when mastered to its fullest, can also unleash a weakened form of King Gong, even allowing one to forcibly twist the body in midair, while off the ground, effortless dodging ordinary enemy attacks. Seeing everyone sweating profusely under the scorching sun, some even bruised, showing signs of mild heat stroke, Liu Ming signaled for a short break, and began the second form of training, the second form of the 8 crazy fists, grasping the hard and soft body. Fangen, come here. This form is practiced in pairs, to enhance flexibility and resilience, so it requires a sparring partner. Groups of 3 ensure that one person can take turns resting, thus increasing the duration of the training. As Fangen approached, Liu Ming formed his right hand into a dragon claw shape and grabbed Fangen's shoulder blade from behind. Then, wrapping his left hand around Fangen's waist, he exerted upward force, throwing Fangen over his head and landing heavily on the stone pavement several meters away. Everyone's eyelids fluttered. This was murder. This was stone pavement. A normal person would have been injured if he landed on it. but Fangan simply dusted himself off and climbed to his feet as if nothing had happened, laughing. "Boss, you're so strong. Ha ha ha. Luckily, I'm made of iron. Keep going," Liu Ming said, then rushed forward again, locking Fangan's joints and throwing him violently. Liu Ming's movements were slow with each grappling and wrestling move, demonstrating the exact method of grappling and throwing a teammate to the ground, striving to ensure everyone learned. This form trains your close combat and resistance to blows. Remember, the ultimate goal is to grab your opponent's joints and throw them to the ground. Alright, start your pairs training. You don't need to train on the stone floor, the sand is for you. But remember, anyone who slacks off will spar with me on the stone floor. After nearly 10 minutes, Liu Ming, satisfied that he had thoroughly taught the basic grappling techniques, signaled the start of the training. The sound of thumping echoed on the sand as everyone, freshly recovered from their extreme Goju Ryu training, began their self-torturing training again. After being thrown down, each one, under Liu Ming's urging, gritted their teeth and quickly climbed to their feet, their faces twisted in pain, to continue training. Liu Ming's words about being lazy and sparring with him on the stone slab had frightened many. On the sun-baked sand, hundreds of people were wrestling and fighting, sweating profusely, soaking the sand beneath their feet, and leaving them covered in mud and sand. Chapter 145, Devil Instructor, Crazy Boxing. For Guangcheng, today was an incredibly difficult day. As a senior in Wuling University's Department of Physical Education, majoring in long-distance running and javelin throwing, he swore he'd never been so exhausted in his entire 7-year athletic career. He was one of the 21 people Liu Ming had chosen to complete the entire physical fitness test, and he ranked in the top 5 among those 21. But even then, he was exhausted and gasping for breath. Bang! He once again slammed his opponent into the sandpit. His opponent was a powerfully built man, nearly 1.9 meters tall, while Guangcheng was a head shorter, though only about 1.7 meters tall. His agility, honed by years of physical training, made him a match for the massive man before him. And the man before him was clearly even more exhausted. He was panting heavily, sweating profusely, his face flushed unnaturally in the heat, and his body twitching slightly, clearly reaching his physical limits. If he went into shock the next moment, Guangcheng wouldn't be surprised. After all, everyone has their limits to training intensity, and the amount of training he was currently doing was no less than what he'd been doing in 3 or 4 days at school. Even he felt like he was about to collapse, so how could these people, whose stamina was probably even weaker than his, possibly hold on? Liu Ming took in every scene before him. After over an hour of non-stop, frantic training, he could roughly gauge the strength and limits of these people. You rest. You and you rest for a while. Those on the verge of shock were promptly stopped by Liu Ming to recover. The rest, however, didn't dare to stop until Liu Ming called for a halt, gritting their teeth and persevering even as their bodies faltered. 2 hours had already passed since the training began with the grappling technique. Liu Ming finally stopped everyone and summoned the nature spirit, Kemenwen. Recover their strength, he commanded. As you command, Kemenwen said, bowing slightly. With a wave of his withered wooden staff, countless green rays of light showered upon the crowd, who, upon hearing Liu Ming's call to stop, had collapsed on the scorching sand, unable to move, like the dead. In the green light, the sweat that had been steadily beading on everyone's foreheads vanished, and a chill instantly swept over them. The entire sandy expanse was enveloped in green light, casting a vast shadow over the scorching sun. Though they were still exhausted, at least they were temporarily relieved from the scorching sun, allowing them to recover quickly. 10 minutes later, Liu Ming began teaching the next 6 forms. Among them was the elbow and knee hardness method, which, like ancient Muay Thai, involves striking hard objects to strengthen bones and resist blows. Muay Thai emphasizes the so-called 4 limbs and 8 body attacks, using the fists, legs, knees, and elbows as 8 weapons. Its characteristic is that these 8 parts of the body are honed to weapon-like strength, which is why it was incorporated into the Crazy Fist Dukakuen's Crazy Fist 8 forms to cultivate physical strength. Next is Wind Speed Hard Soft Fist, which trains punching power and speed, similar to boxing. Boxing focuses on punching speed and force, making it ideal for training strength and speed. Then there's steel whip hard soft power, which trains leg strength and power, similar to Sanders' high whip and heavy whip kicks. Chinese Sanders' international reputation is primarily based on leg skills. The lightning fast high whip kicks and heavy whip kicks often leave opponents completely unprepared. And then there's water shape hard soft phase, which, like ancient yoga, trains flexibility through body twisting to enhance agility and the ability to coordinate limb movements and evade various attacks. Indian yoga is renowned for its training in flexibility. Only with sufficient agility can one evade many difficult attacks with movements beyond the imagination of ordinary people. There's also the Panshi Gangrao Shenstone hard and soft body that uses striking to strengthen muscles, like the Huakshahenglian, horizontal training. In martial arts, defensive capabilities are always as important as offensive ones. Only with strong resistance to blows can one last longer in the ring. Increasing muscle resistance and strength through striking is a fundamental principle known to most martial artists. This method was also refined and incorporated into Duquesne's Crazy Fist training system. Finally, there's the dynamic hard and soft eyes that strengthens nerve reflexes. In unarmored combat, failure to dodge leads to injury. This creates a fear of being hit and leads to a complete focus on dodging attacks. Over time, this practice becomes almost instinctive. Of course, this progress comes at the cost of injury. Without appropriate treatment, hidden injuries can easily develop. After completing the Crazy Fist's 8 forms, from extreme hard and soft flow to dynamic hard and soft eyes, Liu Ming stood by calmly to oversee the training. On the sand, the crowd enthusiastically began training in the 8 forms. It was clear their fighting spirit and perseverance had been driven to the surface by the pressures of survival in the apocalypse. Even after the entire training session, not a single person had collapsed or stopped training. This surprised Liu Ming. He had spent a fortune in his later life to learn this training method at a martial arts gym. Of the students training simultaneously, only a little over half managed to complete the full set of the 8 forms. Yet, these guys had managed to persevere. Of course, this was also due to the fact that he had Kaimengwen release his tranquil light to cool them down, restoring their strength twice. But someone's about to collapse, Liu Ming said with a smile. As soon as he finished speaking, a woman, thrown to the ground by her opponent, could not get up, as if she had suffered heat stroke and shock. Kaimengwen, Liu Ming said, pointing in the direction of the woman's fall. The handsome old youngling suddenly understood, and a green light showered down on the woman. After a few breaths, the girl began to groggily open her eyes, but she still felt a splitting headache. Seeing this, Liu Ming said to the search team members nearby, "Take her to the shade." He had mentally assigned the girl to the shelter's reserve team. Those who couldn't hold out during the training would naturally be eliminated from the search reserve team. This was his plan. One by one, those who clearly couldn't hold out during the training were taken to the shade to rest. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, it was almost dusk. Glancing at the sky, Liu Ming instructed Ma Jun, standing by his side, "Now, take your men to the nearby pharmacies and gather all the traditional Chinese medicines I need. Ginseng, reishi mushroom, astragalus root, American ginseng, synopsis root, pseudo ginseng, atractylodes macrocephala, white peony root." After listing the 12 herbs he needed, Liu Ming added, "Drive my raptor around the trucks and take as many of these 12 herbs as I can." It was time to prepare Crazy Fist tonic meals for these guys. He truly missed the days of painstakingly gathering these 12 herbs for his own meals. He couldn't wait to see these guys' noses bleed after drinking Crazy Fist tonic meals. He remembered the first time he took Crazy Fist tonic meals to repair a physical injury. He had a severe nosebleed. At first, he'd assumed it was due to his own weakness and hadn't dared to take more, but later he realized it was normal. Chapter 146 Howling at Night. On the eve of transfer, the sweltering summer wind whipped up discarded newspapers, mineral water bottles, cans, and other debris. On the street, amidst the whirling chaos, a man in silver armor and a crimson cape held down the head of a ferocious beast, nearly 4 or 5 meters long, with his right hand. The beast, crushed to the asphalt by his uncanny strength, dented its massive head in its frantic struggles, yet it could not escape the grasp of the frail arm. The man who subdued the F-ranked beast with brute force was, of course, Liu Ming, out hunting for the blood of evolved beasts. Golden horned wild deer. Excellent. Deer blood is a great tonic. Liu Ming smacked his lips in satisfaction, observing the massive evolved beast whimpering beneath his palm. This was a herd of wild deer that had evolved during the catastrophe, escaping from the mountains near Wuling City. They had once wreaked havoc under the leadership of a golden horned deer king. Later, when Liu Ming was using the 8 crazy fist training method to improve his physical fitness, he'd heard about the powerful tonic of evolved deer blood at the martial arts gym, but he'd never been able to obtain it. Unexpectedly, he'd now captured an entire evolved deer alive. Those guys are in for a treat. Liu Ming laughed heartily, exerting force with his palm and crushing the evolved deer's head. With a wail, the evolved deer completely lost its life force. However, lifeless dead things can be captured in a special space by the magical camera, and Liu Ming then captured this massive multi-ton deer carcass in a remarkable photograph. At dusk, Liu Ming rode on Jizarong, followed by the fat cat Wuan and the bear-like Scarface, arriving in front of the train station square now, in front of the wall of ashes. Sumi and his men remained at the train station. The 4-meter-high red wall blocked the view, while also protecting the survivors within. 12 towering stone fortresses and arrow towers firmly protected the 4 rectangular walls. Liu Ming stood before the 2 dark silver steel gates of the wall of ashes. Above them stood a small, 3 or 4 meter tall watchtower, also forged from the solid ash. Gong Ruohan, accompanied by her 2 flame art spirit assistants, waved frantically at Liu Ming from the watchtower. Sumi, sensing Liu Ming's arrival from afar, leaped from the wall of ashes and pounced on him. Gong Ruohan had forged these gates in a single day, capable of withstanding attacks from even C-rank monsters. With a creak, Liu Ming had barely stepped before the steel gates when they flew wide open. Peering through the slightly ajar gap, he saw Gong Ruohan commanding the clay golem to open them from the inside. Just as Liu Ming entered the gates, the distant roar of a car reached him. Marjan and his team, who had been collecting medicinal herbs, had returned. Over an hour later, in front of dozens of large iron pots, everyone stared with grim expressions at a black liquid that bubbled continuously and exuded a bitter medicinal smell. A girl from the training team, who had persevered through the entire afternoon, asked with an embarrassed look on her face, "Boss, do I have to drink this?" "Hehe, what do you think?" Liu Ming gave her a forced smile, glancing at everyone who seemed hesitant about drinking his carefully brewed crazy fist tonic. The tonic normally takes at least 10 hours to make, but under the torrent of energy flames from the evolutionists, it took just over an hour. Hurry up. 3 bowls per person. Who wants to refuse? Liu Ming suddenly roared, frightening the 600 people. Then, under his hawk-like gaze, each one obediently filled their large wooden bowls and began to pour the liquid down their throats, pinching their noses. Anyone who dares to spit out what I brew will be hung from a telephone pole and left to swelter in the cold all night. The first group to be fed the Chinese medicine immediately began to retch after downing the large bowls. However, Liu Ming's intimidation kept everyone from actually spitting out the medicinal food. Even if they did manage to vomit, they forced themselves to swallow it down. While ordinary Chinese medicinal decoctions wouldn't be this unpalatable, the addition of golden horned deer blood mingled the bitterness with the fishy pungent smell of rancidity, a scent that made Liu Ming frown. A group of people began wailing as they devoured the medicinal food from over a dozen large iron pots, each devouring at least 3 bowls. A man, who had just put down his bowl, suddenly let out a scream. Everyone looked over to see blood gushing from his nostrils like a faucet. Following this initial scream, a series of cries and screams rang out. Most of the people were bleeding from their noses. "Boss, is this going to happen?" someone asked in fear. "Haha, it's okay. This is normal. Your constitutions are too weak. Eating 2 more nourishing meals won't cause nosebleeds. You're just not strong enough to absorb them yet." Liu Ming laughed heartily at this, and when he had enough, he explained to the already annoyed crowd, "Alright, after dinner, go and rest. We'll continue training tomorrow. Everyone who participated in training today will receive 10 points. As soon as Liu Ming finished speaking, the 600 people noticed an additional 10 points on their justice scales. Everyone beamed with joy, preparing to add any unused points from the morning to a treat for a good dinner that evening. Oh, I forgot, you still owe 10 points. But once points are given, they can't be taken back. This will be used towards your daily points tomorrow. Everyone's joy was clearly premature, as Liu Ming then thought and added. Those who chose to join the D-class professions, after most of the day's work, only earned 7 or 8 points, or as few as 4 or 5. Kinyu was responsible for recording all of these points, and entering them into the justice scales. Liu Ming had temporarily granted Kinyu permission to issue tasks worth less than 10 points. However, because everyone still owed 10 points, and since everyone had only worked half a day since the afternoon shift, none of the over 500 D-class professionals had yet to pay back those 10 points. After dinner, the 230 or so people who had managed to persevere through the afternoon's frantic training until dusk began moving into the dozens of tree houses Liu Ming had newly revitalized, arranged by Ma Jun. Although most of them were crammed into a single room, it was much better than sleeping in the waiting hall, and this excited each of them. They had long been fascinated by these magical tree houses, seemingly reserved only for transcendence. With the appearance of these dozens of tree houses, which Liu Ming had spent the entire afternoon constructing, all the trees in the treehouse square came to life. Hundreds of tree houses appeared, encircling the square like a lush forest. This was Liu Ming's original intention when he had Kinyu issue a tree planting task to earn points. There was not a single usable tree left in the entire train station square. By then, Liu Ming had already returned to his tree villa. This tallest animated tree house currently houses only 6 people: Liu Ming and Ma Jun, Jelin, Gong Weixin, Gong Ruohan, Jie Shengnan, and Mao Fengji. It's not crowded at all. Liu Ming sat cross-legged in his room on the second floor of the villa, deep in thought. If memory serves, tomorrow is the official date for the military and government to relocate all the remaining safe havens to the eastern safe zone. The massive relocation of hundreds of safe havens, involving hundreds of thousands of people, will undoubtedly attract a terrifying number of monsters. As far as I can remember, the casualties during that massive relocation accounted for 1/3 of the total number of participants. In other words, for every 3 people who participated, only 2 would successfully reach the eastern safe zone under the protection of the military and government. And tomorrow is also very important to Liu Ming. More specifically, it's the monsters attracted by this largest relocation operation in Wuling City's history that are important to him. They are prime top tier sacrifices. The eve of the relocation is bound to cause sleepless nights for countless people, and Liu Ming is certainly not the only one. Chapter 147, Citywide Transfer, Different Levels. The wind's picking up. Standing atop the stone fortress's arrow tower in front of the wall of ashes in the early morning, Liu Ming's eyes darkened as he gazed at the ever-changing sea of clouds in the distance, whipped by the fierce wind. People in the square were already starting to get up. With a single leap, Liu Ming leaped from the tower, landing safely on the wall of ashes. Then, with another leap, he leaped back into the square. Gathering the search team, Liu Ming spoke solemnly. Today is the day all safe spots must be relocated to the eastern safe zone. The massive commotion will draw all kinds of monsters out of their lairs. I need to go out for a while, and the time is uncertain. Some of these monsters might attack the shelter. I'll only be taking Fangan, Gu Yun, and the giant cats. The safety of the shelter is in your hands. Liu Huchuan excitedly promised. I promise to complete the boss's mission. With me, we are invincible. We will defend the shelter. Liu Ming ignored him and continued. I'll hand over control of the gargoyle unit to Ma Jun, while Gong Weixin and Ma Jun will handle the defense. The daily training of the Class C professionals must continue today. Ma Jun will train them according to the methods I used yesterday. Alright, all of you, get to work. Fangan and Gu Yun, follow me. With that, Liu Ming, along with Fangan and Gu Yun, the 2 human shields, headed for the main gate. The clay golems, already waiting there, saw their master approach, and immediately opened the 2 heavy steel doors. Creak. Amid the clatter of iron gates opening and closing and the scraping of the ground, Liu Ming, along with his 2 pet dragons and his giant cats, walked out of the slowly opening gate. As they were outside, Gu Yuan asked, "Boss, do you want to drive?" "No, the roads won't be good today. We'll just break down." "Driving? What a joke." Today was the day for the entire city's evacuation. Hundreds of thousands of people were moving in several directions toward the former military sub-district headquarters, now the Eastern Security Zone. It would be a miracle if the vehicles were still able to move. After Liu Ming jumped onto Sumi's back, he addressed the 2 men and 2 cats. "Fangan, sunny day. Gu Yuan, dark cloud." Unlike Scarface, the unruly and obedient Sumi, these 2 giant cat leaders had been tamed over the past 2 days by his communication and affinity skills. At least, carrying a person or something was no problem for them. "Disperse." Fangan and Gu Yuan mounted the giant cats, and at Liu Ming's command, the hundreds of giant cats behind them instantly dispersed. Some climbed onto the rooftop, their nimble figures leaping in midair as they followed, while others weaved through the alleys. If they paraded through the streets with such a large group of evolved beasts today, they would undoubtedly be mistaken for a monster herd, potentially leading to a conflict with the military and government's transfer team. Therefore, it was safer to disperse. As for why he had brought Fangan and Gu Yuan with him, it was because he was still short of 2 tanks. His cats had sufficient offensive power, but there weren't many tanks capable of withstanding direct attacks. Currently, there were only 3D level leaders capable of this task. Fangan, with his steel hit knight power, could temporarily block attacks from peak D level, even those approaching C level. Gu Yuan also possessed defenses comparable to those of a D level professional, making them 2 perfect tanks. Riding on Sumi's back, they sped towards the nearest safe haven for relocation, closely followed by 2 people and 3 cats. Zilirong, beneath his feet, darted underground, the silhouettes of giant cats looming in hidden corners beside him. Liu Ming, suddenly filled with pride, said, "I won't return until I've hunted enough evolution blood to elevate my dragon pet to C level. Come on, let's do some serious work." The nearest safe haven to the train station was the neighborhood, where they'd rescued Chu Huxin's family and encountered Ni Kangsang and Chu Yesheng. After clearing the neighborhood that day, they left a group of armed special police officers stationed there to protect the residents. Later, another company of soldiers arrived, joined by dozens of armed police officers and soldiers who remained, forming Safe Haven 61, which housed a staggering 3,000 to 4,000 survivors. Xiaolin, how are the transport vehicles being prepared? A captain with a 3-star badge on his shoulder asked the soldier beside him, dressed in a crisp military uniform and camouflage body armor, and armed with live ammunition. Upon hearing this, the soldier immediately shouted, "Company commander, 18 buses and 41 trucks are ready. We've recruited 120 citizens with strong mental qualities to serve as the main drivers, as well as co-pilots to replace them in the event of their deaths." Judging by the 1 bar and 1 star on his shoulder, he must be the 2nd lieutenant platoon leader under the company commander. The company commander, seemingly in his 30s, nodded with satisfaction, looked at an officer on the other side, and asked, "Kinzeduo, how are the people preparing?" Company commander, a total of 3,639 citizens at Safe Point 61 are ready to go at any time. Excellent. Let's go out and wait. As soon as the command center gives the signal, we'll depart immediately to rendezvous with the 3rd transfer column. With many evolutionary professionals in that column, safety won't be a problem. The only concern is, if something goes wrong during the transfer. With that, he led his platoon leader and deputy company commander out of the low-rise building that had been used as a temporary command post at the safe point. By then, the neighborhood was already crowded with 3,000 to 4,000 people. Nearly half the people were waiting to depart empty-handed. Most had rushed from other locations after learning of the safe haven's location via the citywide broadcast, so they weren't burdened with luggage. The other half, however, were laden with luggage. Most of these residents lived in this complex or nearby, allowing them to carry a significant amount of belongings. The only thing they shared was a look of anxiety. They watched the buses and trucks parked at the entrance, eager to squeeze forward, as if fearing they wouldn't be able to secure a spot on the convoy. Move aside, let me pass. My husband's a convoy driver recruited by the military. If you don't let me pass, do you still want to get on? A woman, still heavily made up despite the apocalypse, cursed as she pushed through the crowd in front of her. That's right. My brother is also a convoy driver. We get on first. Make way. Why are you pushing? A young man joined the women, pushing towards the entrance. But just as he was about to reach the door, he accidentally bumped into the back of a tall, muscular man, who shoved him hard and sent him crashing to the ground. He could only hear the man cursing, "I don't care who you are. If you push me again, I'll beat you to death." As the scene grew increasingly chaotic, a soldier suddenly took to a loudspeaker and shouted, "Everyone, maintain order. I repeat, everyone, maintain order. Anyone disrupting order and preventing others from boarding will be seated last." Upon hearing this, everyone still pushing and shoving stopped, and the crowd instantly returned to calm. Some people rushed into the crowd and dragged out those who had just claimed to be the driver's family members, who were pushing forward. "Why are you pushing? The soldiers will set up a special passage for us in a while. Are you stupid? Come out with me now. We'll let you board first. Why are you pushing now? Aren't you ashamed?" The men explained as they led their families out and headed towards a pedestrian walkway formed by soldiers. 300 or 400 people suddenly appeared in front of the 3,000 or 4,000 people standing closest to the convoy at the gate. Fuck. Why are they allowed to go first? I've been lining up here since late at night. That's right. It's so unfair. You soldiers and officers, explain to us all why they're allowed to cut in line. Seeing people cutting in line, hundreds at a time, thousands of people erupted in excitement. The company commander, who had just emerged from the temporary command post and saw the chaotic scene before him, shouted coldly, "Why? Because they are all the family members of the drivers who'll be driving you to safety. You want to go first, too? Okay. Anyone who thinks they have the driving skills to drive a whole carload of people away from a monster's mouth, step forward. If not, shut up." Everyone fell silent after hearing this. The disparity between the classes of survivors of the apocalypse is beginning to become apparent, and it's a disparity you're powerless to change. The capable enjoy preferential treatment, while the less capable suffer what they perceive as unfair treatment, and this will gradually permeate every aspect of life. Chapter 148, Storms Rise, Monsters Attack. Bang, bang, bang. Huge crimson fireworks, striking even in daylight, burst into the sky over the heart of Wuling City, blooming like blood lotuses. Here they are. Everyone, get on the buses in order, and get ready to go. The company commander of Safe Point 61 immediately gave the order upon seeing this. The impatient survivors quickly boarded the buses. Naturally, the first to board were the drivers and their families. Those who scrambled to get on and pushed forward were pulled out by the soldiers and special police responsible for maintaining order. Some, confident of their strength, refused to obey orders and were elbowed and kicked several times before they settled into the back. Liu Ming, along with his men, had already appeared in an alley outside the residential complex. He quietly watched the crowds queuing for the buses a few hundred meters away. "Why haven't they arrived yet?" Liu Ming asked, puzzled. With all the noise these people were making, how could the nearby monsters not have already arrived? Yet, the surroundings were so quiet, an eerie silence. Liu Ming thought, moving a little further into the shadows of the alley, fearing he might scare away his soon-to-be-caught sacrifice. Roar. A frantic roar suddenly erupted. Following the roar, countless mutants burst forth from every corner of the residential complex, charging towards the convoy at the entrance. Even from the alley, where Liu Ming was standing, several mutants rushed out, only to be instantly frozen in place by Gu Yuan's frostful heavy sword, then shattered into icy blocks by his flying spears. Led by a large-headed mutant, lurking in a third-floor shop, hundreds of monsters converged and charged towards the complex. The mutant, believing itself to be well concealed, was unaware that its presence and location had been completely revealed to Liu Ming. Given its cunning, Liu Ming would have struggled to detect it, but, by chance, it was a Lord-type mutant. For Liu Ming, who had used the Lord Brain Crystal to gain the ability to control psychic forces. The mental fluctuations of this Lord type controlling the zombies were as striking as a candle in the night, allowing him to locate its true form at a glance. Gazing at the hideous head, resembling a stitched together corpse, standing in a third-floor window across the street from the alley, Liu Ming licked his lips with longing. The Lord Brain Crystal was a valuable asset. It was said that repeated use could even lead to the awakening of legendary telekinesis. Telekinesis was a powerful awakened ability, capable of marvelous applications rivaling even Gong Weekson's awakened sword energy. Having lived 2 lives and yet still failing to awaken this ability had always been a regret for Liu Ming. He gazed at the cannibal corpse, half of its hideous head peeking out of the distant window, his eyes filled with greed, as if he were looking at a priceless treasure. This head now held the promise of awakening his own powers. However, he suppressed his desire, for a powerful aura was rapidly approaching. Compared to the cannibal corpses and their minions, the true target Liu Ming awaited was still far behind. Liu Ming's insight revealed the Lord type mutant's basic information. It was merely a peak level E-class mutant. Even Scarface's giant cat leaders could easily dispatch it, provided it didn't escape. However, for the sake of the rapidly approaching powerful auras, Liu Ming decided to spare it for now, first harvesting the sacrificial offerings hurtling towards him, and then dealing with the despicable mutant. In contrast to Liu Ming's composure, the convoy at the residential gate was now in chaos. Less than a quarter of the total number of people had boarded, while countless cannibal corpses were already charging forward, their faces barking with savagery. Some were covered in rotting flesh and blood, others even with severed limbs. Like steel warriors fighting to the bitter end, they continued to charge at the crowd, brandishing their severed limbs. Some, with their bodies partially severed, were even more ferocious and horrifying, their intestines and organs splattering across the ground, leaving a trail of blood along the way. This scene terrified the ordinary people still obediently queuing for the buses, causing them to cry out in terror. Those who had narrowly escaped death and reached safe point 61 from elsewhere were fine. After all, they had survived various monsters along the way and had become somewhat accustomed to these terrifying creatures. Adapted, they wouldn't cry out when confronted with a monster up close. Meanwhile, those residents who had remained in the neighborhood since the apocalypse were utterly terrified. They ignored queues and desperately scrambled to board the buses. This swarming slowed the pace of boarding even further. But it was clearly no time to maintain order. The monsters were practically at hand. The company commander, his face grim, barked out orders. First and second platoons, close the roadblocks. Defend where you are. Third platoon, hurry and get everyone aboard. Everyone, move. With that, he led his soldiers to the front of the convoy, quickly closing several wooden and caltrop barricades. Fire. Da-da-da. Automatic rifles and pistols wielded by soldiers and armed special police began to spew flames, and the black mass of corpses fell like harvested wheat. Amidst the torrent of fire, these ordinary cannibal corpses were instantly cut down like ordinary people being slaughtered. The only difference was that most of them could immediately rise and charge forward. As long as they weren't shot in the head, they were like immortals, constantly attacking the enemy. But to these well-trained soldiers, these cannibal corpses were like sitting ducks. Many were blasted in the head by stray bullets, ultimately becoming headless corpses that collapsed and twitched. But the soldiers had no time to rejoice, because with the fall of the ordinary cannibal corpses, the truly terrifying creatures finally appeared. One after another, the jet black mutants continued to stand tall amidst the ever-decimating hordes of their kind, rapidly approaching the defensive line in front of the convoy. Machine gun squad, open fire. At the company commander's command, 3 machine gun squads, comprising nearly 10 light and heavy machine guns, rapidly opened fire. Under the fierce barrage of machine gun bullets, ordinary cannibal zombies were practically shattered in half. Even the giant, purely strength-focused cannibal zombies were reduced to a bloody mess, their flesh pierced by fist-sized bloody holes. Amidst these rampaging apocalyptic monsters, humanity's firearms finally demonstrated their terrifying power. Roar. Another roar echoed. Following this eerie roar, a scene unfolded that astonished everyone. The monsters, now less than 100 meters from the convoy, retreated like a tide. Company commander, what are these monsters up to? A platoon leader asked, perplexed. Why are you asking so many questions? Third platoon, get everyone aboard, the company commander replied casually. He then turned to look at the people boarding the bus, frowning. Only half had boarded yet. His anxiety was clearly visible. The monster's retreat filled him with a sense of foreboding. This act was even more threatening than their continued relentless attacks. Roar, roar, roar. Less than half a minute after the monsters retreated, the eerie roar, seemingly from afar, rang out again. Amidst the roars, the zombies launched another attack. This time, unlike the previous one, the zombies were charging headfirst with the ordinary cannibals. Damn it. Do these brain-dead monsters have any sense? The company commander cursed fiercely. Open fire. As a seasoned battlefield commander in his 30s, he could discern the true purpose of the monster's retreat at a glance from the enemy's formation. That time, the retreat had been intended to adjust their formation, allowing the ordinary cannibals to take the brunt of the firearms in the front, while relegating the more deadly monsters to the rear. If those terrifying mutants could successfully break through the defenses, each one could unleash the destructive power of a dozen or even dozens of ordinary cannibals. Even the most battle-hardened Iron Blood warriors, if they hadn't evolved, would be unable to withstand a casual attack from the mutants. The barrage of firearms continued to ravage these ordinary monsters, but the ordinary cannibal corpses were nearly inexhaustible. They formed a solid human wall, absorbing almost all the stray bullets and firmly blocking the mutants. Meanwhile, the zombie horde had appeared less than 60 meters from the convoy's defensive line. According to the company commander's experience, if the mutants approached the line within 50 meters, their terrifying explosive power could almost instantly overwhelm them. By then, only 2/3 of the people had boarded the vehicles. The remaining third, seeing the monster so close, grew increasingly panicked. Even a platoon of soldiers diligently maintained order, but it was no match for the existential terror faced by thousands of people. The pace of boarding slowed down again in the chaos. As always, misfortunes never come alone. Just as the hundreds of soldiers, staring at the zombie horde dozens of meters away, and sensing the chaotic crowd behind them, began to grimace with despair, even larger figures appeared in groups at the end of the road hundreds of meters away. Demons. A soldier from the machine gun squad, after reloading his ammunition and observing the scene, spoke in a hoarse voice. Chapter 149. Meet Fei Yi again in front of the pet shop. Liu Ming remembers the city-wide evacuation of survivors, a move that transformed the situation in Wuling City. As the first human safety zone established in the Wuling region, the Wuling City Safety Zone served as a forerunner for the entire Wuling Safety Zone and its various counties and cities. After the Wuling City East Safety Zone was officially established, the remaining 6 county safety zones were subsequently established. If I recall correctly, the military and government's evacuation plan called for the dozens of safety points to be organized into 6 transfer columns, ultimately converging at the city's East Ring Road. Armored vehicles and teams of evolved professionals would form a spearhead, piercing through the numerous monsters blocking their way, and heading straight for the East Safety Zone. Therefore, Liu Ming's plan was also to move towards the East Ring Road after the 6 columns had converged. After all, the truly powerful monsters in his memory only appeared last, on the route from the East Ring Road to the East Safety Zone. They were clearly under the command of intelligent monsters behind them, intent on annihilating their prey once everyone had converged. Monsters viewed humans as prey, and naturally, some humans also viewed monsters as prey. Normally, lone C-rank monsters are extremely difficult to find. This time, with hundreds of thousands of troops shifting their forces to target them, even if he killed a few C-rank monsters, it would likely only be a small fraction of the monsters he could find. Liu Ming naturally jumped at the chance to capture this powerful prey. Ultimately, who would be the prey and who would be the hunter would be determined by strength. With a single blow, he crushed the last demon's head, gathered up the body, and turned to leave. Woof woof woof. In an alley, Liu Ming witnessed a startling scene. A mutant cat, the size of a full-grown cheetah, was preying on a pack of mangy stray dogs. Its body was covered in rotting wounds, its eyeballs pale, with dark red streaks clearly visible. It was an F-rank mutant cat, Liu Ming could tell at a glance. Unlike evolved cats like Sumi and her minions, these mutant cats were mutated monsters similar to cannibals. Their brains had been completely necrotic, devoid of consciousness, their only desire was to feed and destroy. Perhaps it was because it had suffered so much bullying from stray dogs when it was still a normal cat. This mutant cat had just chosen not to join the mutant army in attacking the human convoy, but to instead single-handedly confront the group of stray dogs. But it was clear these strays were no match for the mutant cat. Every time the mutant cat swung its paw, the stray dogs let out a yelp and flew away. These stray dogs were actually in good health. None of them looked like the scrawny skeletal strays that had wandered for years, but rather had a standard build. Even beyond their matted fur, they were quite adorable. Liu Ming thought to himself, these must be pet dogs, abandoned by their owners after the apocalypse, wandering for just over 10 days. But facing the ferocious monster, these pet dogs were like lambs to the slaughter, forced to accept a tragic fate. Just as the stray dogs seemed on the verge of total destruction, a grey-white Alaskan Malamute suddenly leaped up and bit the mutant cat's rotting neck. In one gulp, it tore off a large chunk of rotting flesh from the mutant cat's neck, revealing a faint, dark red gullet. It spat out the rotten flesh, then continued to bite the mutant's neck. A punctured or even torn throat would have been fatal for any ordinary creature, but this was a mutant monster. The moment it was bitten, it swatted 2 stray dogs, its ferocity undiminished. The other stray dogs, visibly emboldened by the Alaskan's ferocity, suddenly took the lead, acting as if they had found a leader. Instead of their usual fearful avoidance, they all lunged at the mutant cat, howling. Though the mutant cat lacked a sense of pain, the repeated bites of flesh and flesh ripped from its flesh made it furious. Meanwhile, the grey-white Alaskan, still biting the mutant's neck, suddenly lowered its head and bit down, catching the Alaskan on the back. Then, with a powerful jerk, it flung the Alaskan several meters away, crashing to the ground. Ouch. With a scream, the Alaskan collapsed helplessly. Seeing the cat fall to the ground after being bitten, the other stray dogs immediately stopped their attacks and rushed to block the Alaskan. They seemed afraid the mutant cat would continue its attack on their companions. The mutant cat, unconcerned with anyone blocking its path, charged ferociously at the stray dogs. One after another, the stray dogs that had stood in Alaskan's way were knocked to the ground. Some smaller dogs even vomited blood from the corners of their mouths, undoubtedly suffering from internal bleeding. Injuries like these in the apocalypse would be a death sentence even for humans if they didn't receive prompt medical attention, let alone these ordinary pet dogs. These dogs were doomed. Just as Liu Ming shook his head and prepared to leave, he caught sight of a sign that made him pause in shock. Behind the stray dogs was a shop with a pink sign that read Chyanshan Dog Home. Liu Ming finally understood why the dogs looked so plump and strong. They didn't look like strays who had been wandering the streets for years, but rather like bedraggled pets who had been lost for a few days. He also knew why they were clinging to this place, willing to fight the mutant cats to the death rather than flee. Meow. Sumi beside him suddenly called out. You mean you want to save them? Liu Ming asked, stroking his pet's head. Sumi nodded affirmatively. Liu Ming chuckled softly and said gently, indeed, Sumi also guarded your previous master like this. They're all fools. Swoosh. The sound of a sharp weapon slicing through the air echoed, followed by a loud bang. The mutant cats were shattered to pieces by Liu Ming's evil dragon spell. A group of dogs that didn't have time to move out of the way were drenched in blood and flesh. Ta-da-da. A series of crisp footsteps treaded on the road paved with the mutant cat's flesh and blood, moving towards the stray dogs covered in wounds. What a bunch of foolish dogs. Your owner doesn't want you anymore, yet you're still clinging to this lousy pet shop. Do you think he'll ever come back? No. Never. Liu Ming harshly lectured the dozens of stray dogs, some cute and silly, some clever and fierce. But a strange feeling still lingered in his heart. He had endured countless hardships since the apocalypse to acquire Giseli Rang and Sumi, 2 dragon pets who had been with him through thick and thin. How could this lousy pet shop owner deserve such loyalty that so many pets would rather fight to the death against an invincible mutant cat than abandon him? Otherwise, with the strength of that F-rank mutant cat, it could only have hunted down a few scattered stray dogs, not so many injured. Lucky for you. My Sumi is going to save you, you fools. Liu Ming cursed, summoning Kameng Wen. Heal these guys. Mengwen's first words made Liu Ming's face darken. I didn't expect the one I protect to be someone who cares for nature. As a nature hero, he was generally kind to all creatures of nature, so he readily accepted Liu Ming's order to heal the dogs. When most of the injured stray dogs had recovered, and even the Alaskan dog that had been bitten on the back by the mutant cat and flung away had begun to scar and heal, Liu Ming's eyelids suddenly twitched. As if sensing something, he frowned and shouted, Mengwen, stop. You stupid dogs, get back into your pet shop, and don't come out. As soon as he finished speaking, dozens of stray dogs obediently filed into the pet shop. This was because Liu Ming had used his abilities of communication, telepathy, and intercommunication with all things. Otherwise, he would have been unable to control these pet dogs. Hiss. A cold, sharp reptilian hiss echoed, and a massive black snake appeared in midair outside the alley. The massive black snake flapped its 2 pairs of transparent wings, like cicada wings, and waved its 6 slender legs, like insects, rapidly flying towards Liu Ming. Behind it, a large group of black dots, also flying in midair and following closely, were a group of strange, winged snakes. Fatty. Liu Ming spoke slowly, watching the strange snakes approaching the alley in trance, and lunging straight at him. His voice was free of surprise or fear, but instead hinted at a hint of joy. Chapter 150, The Tide Turns, I'll beat you to submission. Although he had no idea how the fat legacy child had found him, or why it attacked him, Liu Ming knew one thing: this was likely the first C-rank sacrifice to come his way. After 2 or 3 hours of hunting and collecting sacrifices that morning, Liu Ming had collected hundreds of E-rank and even D-rank monster sacrifices, but he had yet to hunt a single C-rank monster, and even then, he had only encountered a few. Not only were C-rank monsters incredibly rare, but they were also known for their exceptional ability to escape, most adept at fleeing if defeated. Last time, the fat legacy child's lack of flight had allowed him to escape. But now, with the equally swift flame dragon wing cloak, Liu Ming felt more confident in capturing the unusual snake. Watching the giant snake approach, Liu Ming unleashed a flaming breath laced with molten lava. Taking advantage of the scorching heat wave from the flames, which temporarily confused the giant snake's perception, Liu Ming waved his hand, unleashing a dozen blasts of evil dragon mantra and took crimson rays as thick as his arms. These mere tricks were clearly no match for the fatty Yi's offspring. The serpent screamed, then with a flutter of its wings, burst free from the blaze and heat. Then, a black light emanated from its entire body, enveloping fatty Yi like armor, surprisingly withstanding the attack of the evil dragon mantra. Ordinary D-level attacks proved difficult to penetrate the defenses of a C-level monster. Just as Liu Ming's initial attack seemed poised to fail, something unexpected occurred. The main force behind this initial attack wasn't Liu Ming. The moment the fatty Yi's offspring's head emerged from the blaze, a purple shadow flashed by like lightning. Then, 2 crisscrossing claw marks tore into the giant snake's body, leaving a nearly half-meter long wound below its head. Dark red, almost inky, snake blood splattered in the air, like a black rain. Hiss, hiss. An extremely high-pitched hissing sound echoed, like the piercing sound of sandpaper scraping against a wall or metal scraping against the ground. The hissing sound was like a demonic sound, causing Liu Ming's eardrums to ache. But the pain was of little concern to him. He smiled as he watched the fat Yeezy see, its body twitching in midair, feeling a sense of revenge. He said, "We haven't seen each other for a few days. Sumi and I are no longer the same as we once were. How dare you rush in and die? How foolish. I'll make you into a pot of snake soup soon. Remember to blame yourself for your own stupid death." A few days ago, during the first rescue operation, they had been ambushed by this fat Yeezy. They had been slaughtered and driven into a desperate retreat, even losing several of their own men. Naturally, Liu Ming was overjoyed to avenge this time. The giant snake, sensing Liu Ming's sarcasm, flew into a rage, as if the provocation and taunting of these prey, which had once been its own, angered it more than the injuries it had suffered. A vast black mist emerged from the fat Yeezy, instantly enveloping it. Liu Ming peered through the mist. The nasty wound on the giant snake's body was faintly visible, its flesh buds wriggling as the black energy continued to flow, and the wound was healing rapidly. Then, like a demon wrapped in a gust of wind, the fatty Yeezy rushed towards Liu Ming. Liu Ming was aware of his own strength. He could certainly exchange a few blows with this already C-ranked horror, but if he tried to engage it in close combat, he would probably be entangled in it in a few short moves, strangled to death by its entanglements, and minced into a pile of minced meat. With a thought, flaming wings instantly appeared on his back. As the giant snake rushed towards him, Liu Ming had disappeared, and what greeted the fatty Yeezy was a bloody maw that suddenly emerged from the ground. Zerong rushed out instantly, like a prehistoric monster fighting, revealing sharp fangs as thick as fingers, biting into the giant python in the black fog. The fat stood undaunted. With a flap of its forewings, half its body soared into the air. Immediately, its massive waist, several times thicker than an adult's, lashed out fiercely at Zerong. Zerong, weighing at least 10 tons, was instantly sent flying, tumbling violently several times, denting the concrete road, before coming to a stop. Its massive body resembled a heavy truck overturned at high speed, crushing several parked cars into a pile of scrap metal. Roar. Zerong roared in pain. Liu Ming glanced over and saw that Zerong's incredibly strong back had been ripped apart by the blow. Large swaths of dark yellow scales peeled off, revealing the fuzzy flesh beneath. Now, Liu Ming erupted in fury at the sight of his beloved pet being so severely injured. From that single blow, he realized that this fat air's strength had significantly increased since his first encounter, now reaching the pinnacle of C rank. No wonder it rushed so quickly to attack him. It turned out this creature had grown stronger. Kill. Liu Ming roared, pulling out a fist-sized honeycomb-shaped sphere and tossing it into the air. The sphere, upon its appearance, unleashed 3 pillars of white fire, the size of a pinky finger, head-on at the fatty Yee's offspring. The giant snake, carrying the same fierce force it had just dealt a crushing blow to Zerong, pounced, seemingly disdainful of the eyeball-sized creature before it. It made no move to evade the 3 white pillars of fire. Tragedy ensued. Boom. Like 3 rockets hitting their target, the white pillars of fire exploded violently upon impact with the giant snake, sending a scorching wave of air and a shockwave strong enough to lift a sturdy man flying towards Liu Ming, dozens of meters away. The giant snake, already at the center of the explosion, hissed agonizingly. When the explosion subsided and the thick fog lifted, the giant snake's tragic state stood in stark contrast to its previous, seemingly invincible appearance. Its head, once covered in countless black scales, now resembled a bald snake, shattered in patches. Its scales had been shattered and shattered, revealing a bloody, mangled body beneath. It looked even more miserable than Zerong. Liu Ming had clearly grasped the offensive power of his holy fire demon puppet from the previous test. While not as powerful as a short-range missile, it was still significantly more potent than a shoulder-fired rocket. Even a peak-level, first-tier C-rank monster, not to mention any monster below the 4th-tier transcendent, would be vulnerable to the destructive power of human thermal weapons. Of course, compared to a true rocket, the holy white flame pillar was more like a highly compressed application of specialized energy. If it encountered a monster like the Holy Fire Beetle King, immune to most energy attacks, this move would be useless. However, it seemed the fat air was clearly not one of them. Holy Fire Demon Puppet, continue the attack. Liu Ming's face sullenly shone upon the scene. He felt no pity for the battered monster before him, and continued issuing attack commands. He had to stop this fatty air today. Not only had he come seeking death, but he had also injured Zerong. As soon as he finished speaking, several more pillars of white flame shot out from the holy fire demon puppet's paws. This time, the fatty air no longer showed any contempt or even disdain. Instead, it was terrified. Its 4 broad wings flapped frantically, accelerating into the air and attempting to block the blow. Whoa, whoa. 3 pillars of fire narrowly missed the giant snake. Because this attack was a straight line and couldn't turn, it was powerless after being dodged, leaving it helpless against the serpent. However, 2 more pillars of holy white fire struck the fatty air. Another explosion echoed, and the previously injured parts of the giant snake were wounded again, leaving flesh and bone visible, a horrible sight. The 3 pillars of fire he had just dodged actually pierced the air behind him, striking the swarm of demonic court snakes that had flown in its wake. Amidst the resounding explosions, the demonic court snakes suffered heavy casualties. Truly a case of the monks fleeing the temple remains. The witnessing Fei was furious. Their last encounter with this human had resulted in numerous casualties, and this time, their entire army was nearly annihilated before they even landed a single blow. Hiss, roar, sizzle. Fei roared with unbridled fury, his dark green eyes turning blood red. With a look of deep vengeance, he lunged at Liu Ming. However, the subsequent streams of holy white flames were like the death-dealing power of the underworld, sending him screaming and scrambling to evade. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.